seconder? Seconded, Councillor Kelly. Councillor Gearan.
Members, I would have much preferred if this were coming before us as an ordinary motion rather than 140, but that's not to be. This motion is not just about Ballyscouse, it's about our roles as elected members and the commitments we make when we adopt various plans. When we adopt a position not once, twice, but on 3 occasions, we owe it to ourselves and to this council and to the electorate to deliver on those plans. Last year in this chamber, a member rightly asked, what's the point in having a local area plan and the check tools if they're not actually met? Who is held to account? Are they just aspirational documents, or are they going to be progressed? That was Councillor Dockrell, who has now changed his position. Now we're talking about Ballyscouse being opening as a library, and that we even have to go to this degree, I think, is bizarre. Ballyscouse, the work started on it early New Year. It will be completed and handed over within 8 to 10 weeks, and it will be fitted out and open for the people in Donabate before the end of the year. It's been designed and built as a library, and tens of thousands have been spent for that. There was never any opposition to the library in this chamber. Another member, Councillor Johnson, said in this chamber, I acknowledge that the council are committed to providing community space in Donabate. I acknowledge the relocation of the library from the community centre to Ballyscouse, and hopefully this will be completed in the next 12 to 18 months. It's disappointing that that has also changed. The benefits of moving the library: an additional 4,000 square feet in the community centre. It will include a new stage, a performance area for the arts, improved meeting areas for youth, and an enhanced ability for the centre to serve the community. Many of us just know how many people use it. The opposition stems from one source: DP Crossroads, a group not yet 2 years in existence, who attempted to hijack the democratic process through a judicial review. Block houses until such times as they secure the premises solely for their own use.
Councillor Gearan, I'll just remind you the standing orders in terms of, when you're making accusations, and I would question the use of hijack the democratic process there. I don't want you to consider that.
I've taken on board your warnings at the start of the meeting, and I've considered it. That members of this House, members of this chamber, would support a JR against their own council to put homes at risk is bizarre. It should be condemned outright. In fact, the chair of our housing SPC should condemn it. Surely he couldn't agree with it. If we allow any group to derail agreed development, approved plans dramatically voted upon, what's the point of any of us being here? Community groups have a right to advocate, but they do not have a right to override democratic decisions by using the courts as a backdoor. The issue has lingered too long. It's divided this chamber, it's divided communities. It's time for clarity and action. Let's back our decisions, stand by our commitments, and get the library open for the people of Donabate. Thank you.
Councillor O'Brien.
Thank you, Mayor, and thanks to Councillor Gearan for his contribution, and indeed to all the members who have signed the Section 140. It's a pity, as Councillor Gearan outlined, that the mechanism of a Section 140 had to be used in this regard after multiple efforts by councillors to have their say publicly on this matter. We've got, and as well as that, the unprecedented, I believe, need for the Chief Executive to issue a statement citing misinformation and disinformation that was put out into the public realm by councillors in this chamber. And I can, I don't want to impute improper motives, Mayor, but that was quite an unprecedented action that had to be taken because of a statement that was put out citing a different direction that the council was going to be taken, which contradicted the framework plan, which contradicted the capital plan, which contradicted the library's development plan. Just bizarre behaviour, I believe. I think we've unfortunately been prevented from open and transparent discussion around several items in Donabate in the last number of council meetings. I think that's been wrong. and the clear voice from this chamber needs to go out that the information that was put out by councillors in social media and in local press was incorrect, and I believe deliberately incorrect. And I believe that this council should reaffirm the stance that it has held for the last number of years in relation to the provision of the facilities mentioned in the Section 140 motion. Thank you, Mayor.
Councillor Mulville.
Thanks, Chair. At the outset, I would make the case that this motion is in fact ultra vires and will have no effect, because the development of a library, as in terms of the Planning and Development Act, clearly requires a Part 8 approval, and also spending above a certain level, which this will be, also requires Part 8 approval. So this must go to Part 8 through the planning process, and on the basis of it being ultra vires, I cannot support it on that basis, and I would urge others not to either. I do understand and accept that some councillors are supportive of the plans to move the Donabate Portrand Library to the former credit union, and I, in the past, been favourable to this proposal myself. However, I believe there is an urgency now to provide dedicated youth and cultural space in our area as a matter of priority. For example, we have skilled professional youth workers assigned to the Donabate Portrand community, funded by the Department of Justice. However, they have no dedicated base to work from, where they work with their young people who are in need of their help and support. This council partners with youth services across Fingal and has such arrangements in place for youth workers to work out of community centres. Also, our fantastic and growing arts and cultural community in the local area are crying out for dedicated space also, and it will be a perfect fit to co-locate youth work with youth development, cultural and arts with youth development work. We're seeing rapid local development in the Donabate Portrand area, with much needed housing being provided much quicker than expected, and that is why I believe it makes sense to use Bilisk House to provide for dedicated youth and cultural space. I fully support the need for the community centre, which is a fantastic, well-run and important local amenity, to be refurbished, and we need much more community facilities for every group across the area. But given the current lack of indoor community space, I'm of the strong view that we have an acute priority now for dedicated youth and cultural provision, and we should take this opportunity to provide this at the old credit union in the months ahead. This matter and related local matters are more relevant to the local area committee in the first instance, and I have a motion down on this matter on Thursday at the local area committee, and colleagues and others have motions too, and any proposal to change this would come before the full council for approval, but as I say, Part 8 is required in my point of view. That's the advice I've received, and I urge colleagues to vote against this motion. Thanks, Chair.
Council.
The statement was made by Councillor Mulville that he believes this motion to be ultra vires. I think that should be addressed because I believe he's incorrect in making that assertion.
So there's no legal advice to say that we can't have this motion. If the action does require planning, then it would be up to the council to, facilitate whatever planning is required. So whether there's a Part 8 needed or otherwise, this motion is to provide whatever the mechanism that is required. There are also plenty of motions that go forward that are ultra vires that get passed in terms of that don't have an effect. It has happened before. So there's no reason to rule this out or to have this motion, so it's up to members. It's often argued that a motion is ultra vires, and that it's up to members to decide if they want to vote through a motion, whether it is ultra vires or not. Councillor Mulligan.
The last 140 that this council I brought myself along with Councillor Newman and other councillors, and because it relates specifically to a planning issue, as Councillor Mulville alleges that this does too, it was considered ultra vires at the time, and we were said even if it was passed and agreed by this council, it wouldn't be accepted, in that taking a section 140 on an issue that is subject to planning is ultra vires in terms of the method of 140 in the Local Government Act. So if that is the case, then I would be in agreement, because I was told on the last occasion, but at that time a legal opinion was ascertained because the issue related to a judicial review. I understand the legal opinion wasn't ascertained in this occasion. Thank you.
So I'm just going to answer this point first before I take. So let me repeat. If we look through in relation to what the motion is asking, it's asking to proceed immediately with the redevelopment. The assumption that you would make is that's done whatever the appropriate planning mechanism is. So it doesn't state, so it's not immediately relating to a planning decision. I'm not, put it this way, I have enough of my own decisions to answer for without having to answer for decisions made by previous mayors or on previous occasions. But I'm making, and again, it is the mayor to interpret standing orders. So in relation to this one, again, I've argued that motions are ultra vires and that people shouldn't vote for them on that basis, and they've been passed or lost on previous motions. So I don't believe this is ultra vires, but certainly this motion is in order. Councillor Gearan. Now I'm going to be strict on a point of order rather than an argument, Councillor Gearan.
Point of order. Could the management please advise what they feel their position is, as it is important for people who adopt a position?
No, they don't. The management, I don't think, need to advise in relation to that. I've already ascertained that there's no legal advice that there's any impediment to this motion so there's no need for anybody to. Thanks. Councillor Dock.
Thanks, Mayor, and for your work over the last year. I have two main concerns with the proposal. First, are we sure that Belisk House is suitable as a location for a library? Has there been an adequate cost-benefit analysis? And second, has there been adequate public consultation and engagement with the community? On suitability first, I think there's real questions that should be looked at. Converting a building like Belisk House would be difficult. It was originally designed effectively as a bank, as a credit union, so there'll be a need for significant structural changes. Redevelopment will be expensive and will likely cost into the millions. And given we have a fine library already in the community centre, which was refurbished as a library, specifically as a library only 12 years ago, does relocating it now represent poor value for money? At a time when we're told regularly that budgets are tight, should we be considering other options for the building? On the second point around public consultation, this comes down to the fact that the Council doesn't often acquire buildings for community use in Donabate. Given these opportunities are rare and demand in Donabate is high for more space, we should be taking the opportunity to engage with the community. And by the way, that's why I supported the Chief Executive's recommendation to carry out a survey. And I know surveys are imperfect, we all acknowledge that. They only spot or only reflect a point in time, but they are useful in that a significant sample size of the community would have been surveyed, and at least it would have formed the foundation of discussion and debate in the council chamber and the direction we could go in this council chamber. So there are my two concerns, my main concerns that really have to be addressed. What's the best use of the site? Conducting a proper cost benefit analysis, and two is maybe the lack of adequate public consultation and engagement. And that's why I wouldn't be in favour of proceeding immediately with the planned library. And by the way, these are concerns expressed by a lot of people in Donabate, and I'm here to represent those voices. I know every member will have their view on this resolution, and I will put a lot of weight onto what the officials have said. But like any other issue, say the one that if we ever get to it in the Skerries active travel project, can I just wind up very quickly? Like, I don't often speak at full council, so it's important. And given that this actually does reflect or relate to my area, I'd just like to, I'll finish up in 30 seconds. You know, likewise, any other issue, I listen intently to members in other areas that affect them. And I know there'll be a lot of references to the capital plan, the library plan, local area plans, and other plans and interpretations and various different interpretations of those documents. And what are advisory in nature and what is statutory footing. I still think this debate, we shouldn't lose, I suppose, the essence of what the resolution is about, and that's Belisk House. And as a local councillor who's listened to an awful lot of people in the community, as well as other local councillors who be of a similar view, I think we should be slow and proceed with caution on this. And again, just to conclude on Belisk House itself, in 10 seconds, I'll say, look, I've had a savings account there my whole life. I know the building. My granduncle worked there for decades. I took out a loan there a few years ago. You know, I thought it was a great thing that the council did actually acquire this building, right? And I commend the council for it and the local representatives at the time who pushed it. But I just think we should move a little bit more slowly in determining whether or not relocating a library and the expense that cost is the right step for this building. Thanks, Mayor.
Councillor Smith.
Thank you. Firstly, just want to make it clear that myself and my Sinn Féin colleagues have supported the 140 on the basis of ensuring openness and transparency in relation to such important discussions that involve pertinent council decisions on the spending of significant public funds. I've also want to highlight that something that I've told the DP Crossroads Committee in person, that my position hasn't changed in relation to the issues they highlight. I fully and wholeheartedly agree with their general aims and objectives of the group, and I actually want to thank them personally for highlighting a significant issue across the planning legislation and the national development frameworks that are often based on inaccurate data. That's something that is a serious flaw within our national system that needs to be addressed. I also believe we need to separate the emotions from this, and that's not aimed at any one person or group. Unfortunately, they can cloud our perception and can lead us to want to strive to be right rather than be effective. My interest in Donabate stems from a very strong family connection to the area, and I simply want to see the whole community thrive. It's long been a motto that we need to build homes, not just communities, not just housing developments. With that in mind, unfortunately, I think Belisk House has become a red herring and is now a distraction from the actual needs. Shifting the purpose of this building after an initially unanimous democratic vote made some 15 months ago, I think could be viewed as undemocratic by some. I like the group's recent motto, not either or, it's more. With that in mind, I think we need to approach this from a different point of view. I believe one that would eventually lead to a more successful outcome would be looking to repurpose some of the space in the Donabate Framework Plan, in particular the area of the Educate Together recreational hub. We have a large section of that hub dedicated towards outdoor theatre space. We live in Ireland, unfortunately that's going to be very useless for a large proportion of the year. If we could look at an additional extension to Blick's House in addition to what's already been planned, using the periphery space around that and building into the open space, you would effectively create a quarter which could provide ample space for youth and cultural provision without losing the outdoor amenities that are already envisaged. I think that would be the smartest road forward, and it would avoid some of the hazards we're seeing here today. Thank you.
Councillor Ryan.
Thank you, Mayor. It's quite an interesting coalition of members putting their names to this motion, but Councillor Smith has clarified the Sinn Féin position. But it's interesting that not a single councillor from the LEA has signed it. But it is what it is. I wish to make a couple of points. The motion fails to reference the only statutory plan which actually applies to the matter, and that is the LAP. The others are non-statutory and advisory in nature and are subject to change. Section 613 of the LAP in relation to Donabate Library states, Donabate Library opened at the first floor level within the Donabate Portrand Community Centre in April 2014. There has been significant investment in fit-out by the Council to develop the library facility to a high standard and with all modern facilities in place. The library is centrally positioned within Donabate and will serve existing and future residents well. So any move to relocate the library should require a variation to the LAP, which requires public consultation. Also, funding in the capital plan for the library relocation exceeds the threshold of €126,000, whereby a Part 8 process is required, and this involves public consultation also. This has not happened. Section 140 motions do not apply in such cases. There is also, I believe, a change of use issue regarding a possible change of use from a bank to a library, which needs to be addressed, and this should also require public consultation. And I think in that regard, we're talking to Part 4 of the Planning and Development Act in relation to going from Class 2 to Class 10. So this motion, and it's my legal advice, this motion is ultra vires. It's not by definition of being ultra vires out of order, but it's something the CEO needs to reflect on after this meeting. So, thank you very much.
Councillor Donnelly.
Thanks a lot. Just to reiterate, Sinn Féin support for the Section 140 was support for transparency in the Chamber. What the motion calls for has already been agreed, and it is really regrettable that this has divided the Donabate community, and we've all had a raft of emails from both sides of the community in Donabate. And I would happily and wholeheartedly welcome any additional motions that come into this chamber in support of additional community facilities for the area. And I don't think anybody would disagree that the area needs more community facilities. So, you know, I just think it's really unfortunate the amount of time that we have discussed this and how divisive it is being, and really the people of Donabate aren't getting any additional facilities thus far. It's just going round in circles, and that is regrettable. Thank you.
Councillor Johnson.
Hear me now? Yeah. I believe the purpose of Section 140 is to restrict public debate within Donabate and Portrane on their future use of Blisk House, and the CEO's offer to capture community opinions on the preferred use of Blisk House, which she is entitled to as a framework plan, as we all know now, according to the plan, is advisory in nature and open to change. From the very day the offer was made, current and former councillors have been trying to prevent the survey taking place, hence the Section 140 motion before us this evening. Today's events is a sideshow, setting community groups in Donabate against each other and avoiding the real issue, which is the failure to implement the objectives of the Donabate Local Area Plan. The Donabate Local Area Plan provided zoning for an additional 4,000 housing units, with 90% grant permission under construction currently, bringing the population to 20,000 by the end of the decade. However, the objective of the multicultural arts, youth and multicultural facility has not been delivered upon. The provision of an additional 2 rooms at the community centre, while welcome, will in no way meet the indoor requirements of 20,000 of a population, when we have, at the very present moment in time, 31% of the population under 19 years of age with no indoor youth services or facilities. We have youth workers with no permanent home. We have a dramatic society, one of the longest and oldest serving dramatic societies in the country, with no home, no storage area. When they have to put a production on, the senior citizens have to vacate the parish hall for 1 week. We have local groups that have had to move to Drogheda and Lusk because there's no venues and no space currently. The same situation for all our arts groups, the Bleeding Pig. We even have yoga groups now who are carrying out yoga sessions in our golf clubs. This is just totally unacceptable. All the community groups in the Donabate Peninsula, they're all united in one thing, and as are the councillors, that we must ensure the Donabate Local Area Plan and the objectives in that plan are provided for, and the revision of the multifunctional cultural arts and youth centre it seems to me the council are reneging on that, and that needs to be provided for and needs to be planned for now. In an effort to bring all of the diverse groups together, I believe a mediator should be appointed in an effort to bring forward a united position to the council to implement the recommendations in accordance with the objectives of the Donabate Local Area Plan. All councils operate under standing orders and governing legislation, and as a result, I don't believe the passing of this motion can be implemented. We need to all try and work together in the interest of the Donabate community.
Johnson.
Thank you.
Councillor Murphy.
Thanks, Mayor. And I want to commend Councillor Guerin for taking the time to speak to all of the councillors to take this Section 140, which is really an issue that has evolved as a consequence of not being able to have a motion heard in the normal fashion at the previous council meeting. So I commend him for taking the opportunity to do this. But what the substantive piece for me in all of this, and I've been sitting on this council, elected twice over 10 years, and I've seen a lot of Part 8s, I've seen a lot of question and debate go through on different elements, particularly in my own area, Balbriggan. But what I will say is that if you're going to disregard the previous council's decisions on framework plans, library development plans and capital programmes, then you're going to call into the governance and weaken the authority with regard to the council's long-term planning. We have to respect decisions that are made by people who are elected the same as us in different periods of time. And we have to also respect the fact that during that period, Fingal County Council, under a pressure to service the community of Donabate with a formal library space, bought that building with a dedicated understanding that this will become the facility for the library in Donabate. There are many ways to do your business with regard to getting extra support and extra services, and myself and my fellow councillors in Balbriggan have done this by talking to the executive, not by pushing hard and making forced decisions that are only going to undermine the framework plans and development plans that we've already agreed. Thank you, Mayor.
Councillor Mulligan.
Thanks, Chair. I was hoping that Councillor Gearan addressed in his open that some of the councillors who signed it on the basis of that the motion in and of itself should have been heard or should have been allowed in a different context at a different time within the statutory rights for councillors to have debates on motions on chief executive orders and those motions that are on the agenda. That was the reason I supported or signed this motion. It wasn't because I supported the issue. In fact, I didn't. But I would never undermine the democratic process of someone's right to bring a motion forward within the terms. But what Councillor Murphy said struck me in terms of weakening the long-term planning process, because the only statutory document in planning law that was mentioned is the local area plan. And the councillors have all alluded to section 613, 612 and 6.3, which actually relate to a local area plan, which if you brought a planning part 8 tomorrow, the only guidance document that has statutory footing, not that can't be looked at, all plans can be acknowledged, but the only legal document that takes precedent is the Fingal development plan and the local area plan for Donabate, which specifically mentions the library being in the community centre and the investment used in it for current and future need. That's section 113. It's in there in black and white. We spent in April 2024 the entirety of the second last council meeting talking about the need for youth and cultural space in Donabate and Portrane. At that time, every single member applauded all the local councillors for Donabate and Portrane for how cohesive, irrespective of political ideology, that they were on the need for the area. Now, for some reason, we have seemed to abandon the opinion of the local area representatives. I ran in the general election. I knocked on doors in Donabate. I can tell you now, they fully support the councillors they elected to represent them. Look at their vote share in their immediate areas. They wouldn't be going against the grain of every other councillor or other parties if it wasn't for the betterment of their area. It's not about ideology, it's about what is needed on the ground. And it's not one group, it represents the community, and I think we need to reflect that as all members, not just those signatories. Thank you.
Councillor O'Leary.
Thank you. I wasn't going to speak, but I don't know, Councillor Gearan started off, it's unfortunate we are where we are, but we are where we are. And this, I supported the original aims of this group and the councillors. Councillor Mulligan just referred to that long meeting we had, and I still support them. However, we have a proposal before us that's practical and real and is here for action now. We set off on a course that this council democracy in this chamber voted for, and I intend to continue in that direction with all the information I've received so far of recent times and before. I think I've been 16 years in and out of this council, over and back and up and down, and I haven't come across an issue like this before. I commend the local councillors for their energy and enthusiasm, but there is a way of doing business, and one of them is definitely not stopping housing or delaying housing in Donabate by taking a judicial review, whether you're in it or out of it or sideways, against your own council, which would delay badly needed homes. And I still commend them for pushing forward to achieve what they want to achieve. But I think we have to be practical. I stood in that building when it was bought, and when we were all asked, whoever turned up or bothered to turn up at the meeting, what would you like to do with it? And we were scratching our heads a bit, and we arrived at a conclusion that it should be a library. So let it be a library. I think that's great. I'm only waiting for a big library in Skerries, big extension. 15 plus years of Carl Bolan was here, you tell you, maybe 20 years. Paul's here a long time. So, and I'm getting that now. I'm not telling you to wait 20 years. I'm hoping with all the building that's going on that in the near future that you find a site, and you need to find funding. We just had a meeting in camera outlining all the challenges we have there for funding. We're going to build a swimming pool in Balbriggan. We have to borrow the money for it. So, like, we have to go at these things one step at a time. Find a site, find a building, and go at it. We've already made those decisions in our capital plan. So for that reason, I'm going to support this motion. Finally, in Skerries, we have the little theatre in 4,000 square feet. It's there for 20 years. Marion Society there for 50 years. The Skerries Dramatic Society, and are managing quite well in a few older classrooms. So I wish you well in your journey to get to where you want to get to for the theatre and for the youth. Thank you.
Councillor Butler.
Yeah, thank you. You know, the number one issue we're told by all parties in the Oireachtas and here is housing, housing and housing, and if it's not, then it should be. This was a long process getting to where we are with this plan for Donabate. I think a lot of the anger in this room comes from the judicial review that, if proceeded, could have delayed the delivery of a significant number of housing units for 4 years plus. One of the main developments being taken within the county to try and meet our targets. In my opinion, this judicial review should not have been taken. It should not have been taken to risk the delivery of these housing units. I was particularly disappointed that councillors were allegedly...
Councillor Butler, just speak to the motion.
Okay,
Thanks.
will do, yeah. So you know, we're all fighting for community facilities in all our areas. A lot of time and effort has gone into Donabate. We all want more. Donabate wants more. We all want more. I think this new library is going to be fantastic. I was in the old library when it opened, and even then we all knew it was a stopgap solution. This new library will be fantastic for the young people of Donabate. You know, and libraries aren't just, you know, going in and borrowing books and CDs and whatever else. They're also places where, you know, kids can study, kids that don't have room at home, have noisy homes, etc., etc. If you look at the fantastic library in Blanchardstown, and hopefully the one we're going to have in Swords as well. So, like, you know, we also have the fantastic sports complex that's going into Donabate. Again, I'm extremely envious of that, and I really wish we had something like that in Swords. For as long as I've been on the council, every year the community centre in Donabate wins award after award after award. I'm always jealous coming home from award ceremonies, the awards they get and the prize money they get, etc. So obviously extra space going in there is to be extremely welcome as well. Yeah, it's disappointing that we felt we had to put our names to a Section 140. I would have preferred it if it had been dealt with as part of a regular debate as a previous council meeting. But I suppose we are where we are, and I suppose this has directly come from ultimately a judicial review and the potential delay of the delivery of units that would have delayed the delivery of fantastic community facilities for Donabate. Yeah, and I'm, along with other councillors, we'll always keep fighting for extra community facilities for all parts of Fingal. Thank you.
Councillor Newman.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. I just want to add my voice to supporting the Section 140. I did say at previous meetings that I support the Chief Executive. I did get clarification with regards to it according with our local area plan, and I think that's still the case. Councillors are quite right if they wish to bring up if there is some legal issue with regards to the Section A Part A, and if that needs to be employed, well, that's fair enough, like, you know. And I think having been part of a judicial review myself before with regards to Fosterstown, and I do remember at that case the ultra-virus that was called was from the Chief Executive point of view that you were probably obliged not to take out it, legally obliged not to take out the JR because of Section 156 or something like that, and I think that's where that actually came from. And just to say, you know, while I supported the JR and we had it in here at a meeting, we accepted the majority of
Newman,
we accepted
speak to the motion.
Sorry,
the motion concerns the library in Belisk.
Yeah, I'm just explaining my situation why, with regards to the JR, what happened there. which was basically a delayed building of apartments and a school up on that side. So, you know, that's the reason for taking out JR. We're not talking about JR. I mean, that's gone as far as I'm concerned. You know what I mean? I'm just trying to talk to the motion and explain my understanding and that. So if you want to cut across me, Mayor, fair enough. But I don't think you're being fair. Thanks.
Councillor Walsh.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. Firstly, I acknowledge the right of any member or group of members to bring forward a motion and have it debated. I suppose just in terms of the Section 140, what I would say is just a couple of things, and try not to repeat too many points that have been made by other members. Agree with Councillor Butler that housing is absolutely vital, and I would say, I think we would all agree, or certainly almost all of us, that housing is one side of the coin and infrastructure is the other. And we need to provide strong community infrastructure across the county, and we certainly need to do that in Donabate. Several members have referred to the framework plan. Just note that a framework plan was recently approved for Clonsilla, and that in response to questions from me and from a number of other councillors, clear advice was given that that plan, as we know, is non-statutory, and that separate statutory processes will be required to progress any of the major aspects within it. So I'm concerned that the Section 140 as proposed cannot actually achieve what it sets out to do, which is immediate action by the Chief Executive. As I understand it, the subject of the motion is local authority owned development, which is a matter in respect of which the Planning Authority has executive functions under Section 179 of the Planning and Development Act 2000. And if this local authority, if this is local authority owned development, I don't think anyone disputes that it is, then Section 179 applies, and subsection 5 of that section stipulates that Section 140 of the Local Government Act 2001 shall not apply to the development under this section. So while the motion is indeed absolutely, it's absolutely correct that the motion be debated under standing orders, it is, in my view, ultra vires, and I can't support it. And I'll just make one final point. It seems there is very significant, I don't represent Donabate, but I have sympathy for councillors who fight the corner for their area to get decent community infrastructure. And it seems there's significant division in the area over this. I think that's a great shame. I think it's incumbent on all of us as councillors to do whatever we can to promote consensus, to overcome those divisions, and not to do anything, even inadvertently, to exacerbate them. Thank you, Mayor.
Thanks. From my own point of view, I think it's absolutely brilliant that we're getting the substance of the issue debated on a motion which relates directly to it. I want to apologise and take responsibility if at any stage anybody thought otherwise, and or if through my lack of communication I didn't contact Councillor Gearan and make him the facility of having Mayor's business available to raise the issue, or indeed any issue in relation to this directly. So the fact that it's a Section 140 is probably my fault for not having done my job. I would say that this is kind of the nub of some of the issue in relation to Belisk House. Councillor Murphy made a good point, and that is if we keep revising every single decision that a council is going to make on a subsequent council with the re-elections, we'd end up doing nothing. However, there is a similar issue in relation to when you get, for any area committee, for any of us, just after an election, when the people have come and made a decision about who's going to represent them, and you have unanimity from a particular area, it's also impossible or very difficult that if we're at a point of change, that something can be changed and that's the will of the people, then that should be the question. But again, it's for the greater. There are other issues around investment, whether there are other areas in Dublin 15 or elsewhere that require investment more than any particular area. So there's a wide range of issues here. It has been something that's difficult for all of us, and I don't think going into the details of X, Y, Z after that is going to help. But I think that I am not going to support this motion. I think that we need to, where you have all of the councillors from a particular local area just after an election, if there's a question over where the library is certainly sitting or existing at the moment is performing a function, then I think it's certainly reasonable that we go through whatever the decision is. Ultimately, though, it should be the decision of the entire council. So, thanks. Now, Chief Executive, do you want to come in?
Just a few issues for clarification. In terms of 6.13 of the Donabate Local Area Plan, that sets out the factual position of what existed in Donabate at that time. It's not connected to the delivery or otherwise of future facilities. I think it's important for, as Chief Executive, just to be clear in relation to Belisk House and the development of community facilities in Donabate. Belisk House is a singular building purchased for the purpose of a library, and we're currently on site fitting out that building for a library purpose. It won't be the same library as is in this centre. It will be an open library. I might ask Mr. Quinlivan to bring you through the exact details of what's within that library, but I suppose it will be better facilities, better study facilities for young people, more meeting rooms for young people in the library. It'll be staffed by Fingal County Council staff during normal library hours, and after library hours, the option for members to use the building outside of the staffed hours will be available. Members from Baldoyle will know how well that works for local communities, so we're not talking about the same facility. It's a different, more modern library that will be delivered in Belisk House. We can't ignore the fact that there's this considerable space being freed up in the Donabate Community Centre, the equivalent space that is being created in Belisk House. That space will be available for multi-use, including by the youth, including for arts and other options. So it has to factor into the conversation that there's two spaces in play here. In addition to that, I mean, I've been very clear to all members and to non-members of the council in terms of DP Crossroads, Donabate Community Council and others, representative groups in Donabate. We are working constantly to deliver facilities in Donabate, and we can't ignore the fact that Newbridge House is there and the investment we make in that facility, including making the connections for the new communities of Donabate. In addition, we're dealing with developers all of the time in terms of the facilities they need to bring to the town. And in terms of the local area plan, the clearest thing in the local area plan is that we want to deliver a shared facility on the community infrastructure zoned lands adjacent to the recreational hub. So all of those plans are in play, not all of them delivered. The current plan for Belisk House is under construction, which is a refit of a community building, and all of that's in play. It is simply too divisive for us to look to change what are adopted council plans. I did consider whether that was worthwhile. Local members in Donabate will be aware of that. It just caused more division. I don't see the sense in it. We're building out Belisk House. Let's deliver a state-of-the-art library there. Let's free up the community space in the community centre, get that used immediately. Let's do what we can with the Department of Education, who are already looking to secure the site to deliver a shared facility there. It's not either or if you do one, you can't have the other. The plans are in play. We need to look at the funding of the council, and our next capital plan will need to feature further investment. But there's a lot of work underway, and to misrepresent it any other way does not do justice to the community of Donabate, will not do justice to the town of Donabate. We have to work together to get this delivered. And where there's division, I think we're better off as a council to stick to the plans that we've already in place and do more to deliver more. But in terms of the offer that was on the table at one stage of a Red Sea survey, I don't agree it's going to deliver any dividends to the town of Donabate. It'll just prolong this issue and make everybody more divided. So in terms of the motion and the substantive issue in play, that's what we're doing already, and we'd like to continue that work and open the library by the end of the year. And Mr. Quinlivan may have something to add there.
Thanks, Chief Executive. Just Anne-Marie referenced that just to give members some certainty as to what's included in what will be phase 1 of the development, which is the piece that's on site at the moment. Phase 1 is going to deliver a contemporary library with children's and young adults areas on the ground floor of the building. It's also going to provide for the installation of wheelchair accessible lifts to access an adult lending area and library event spaces on the first floor. The new library, and this is critical and a major difference from what's available and possible in the community centre, is that it will operate as a MyOpen library. That gives access to registered members outside of the normal staffed working hours and is a significant innovation in what we are now providing in terms of modern library services. There will be a phase 2 which will be subject to a Part 8, and that is going to grow the library offering in Donabate to in excess of 700 square metres, which is the size of a library that befits a town the size of Donabate. Councillor Dockrell asked if the building was appropriate. A design process has been undertaken by architects and engineers, and they've confirmed for us that this building is eminently usable as a library. It can be repurposed and reused as a library, and it's capable of taking the kind of extension that will move it, the library offering in Donabate, in line with what's available in Rush, what will be available in Skerries and Balbriggan and other significant towns around the county. So the development of the library service, which members you agreed in the library development plan and in successive capital programmes, is a major priority for us as an executive, as a library service, and we're very excited about the prospect of Ballisk House moving forward. And in terms of the cost-benefit analysis, as the Chief Executive has already pointed out, there's 400 square metres of community centre space being released for community uses. The kind of community uses that we envisage are those that are set out in the framework plan, which are youth, arts, community and heritage. And remember, the framework plan also provides for a future extension to the community centre for those uses. The framework plan was done under the LAP. There's an objective that hasn't been referenced in the LAP to undertake a framework plan, and that has been done. There was extensive public consultation, and no issue was raised about the reuse of Ballisk House as a library. But the draft plan that was published at that time was changed to accommodate requests through the 65 submissions for space to be provided for youth, arts, community and heritage spaces, and the draft plan was changed when it was adopted by members.
Councillor Gearin.
This is bizarre. I can't really understand why it's necessary for a Labour councillor to go and get legal advice on a motion on a library. It sounds bizarre. There's something I'm missing here. As part of this 140, I visited Donabate. I spent hours there. I met with people in the centre. I met with locals in the community. I met with people down in Ballisk House. I met 3 ladies having coffee. I asked if I could join them. We spoke about the centre, how they use it, how important it is in their lives. They spoke so highly of the staff there and how many people avail of it. Then I met Sandra, the manager of the centre. She's there over 20 years. She's originally a trainer. She's an inspirational person whose dedication has to be acknowledged. Then I visited the gym, spoke to people there. 480 young people are members of that gym at subsidised rates because it's not for profit. Went from the gym around the back, I saw the small meeting room, the difficulties they had. Then I went down to the creche. I saw the happy children in a safe and caring environment. The commitment of the staff was obvious. Then I went up to the library and I met Ciara, the librarian. And Ciara her enthusiasm was contagious. She showed me the plans for the new library at Ballisk House, and she spoke with genuine excitement and then fear that it mightn't happen. And the library was filling up with young people who all value the space. Then Ciara said to me, if you look over there to the right, you see the big high ceiling, that's where we want to put the stage. That'll sit 80 people, an ideal space for the arts. And Sandra said, yeah, the additional space we're going to get for the creche, more room for the gym, more space, more opportunity for arts, culture and youth engagement. Jesus, isn't that what we're looking for? Isn't that exactly what DP Crossroads claim they want? Or do they want to hold much needed housing to hostage till they get their own front door key? want their own place, we won't. You see, this issue has become about people being unable or unwilling to work with other people. Now, we've all seen politics play out in committees in our local communities, and we've all seen how there's groupings. That's fine, but it shouldn't influence how we deliver spaces and services to our communities. When I went to Balliscouse, I spoke with the architect, I spoke with the contractor, I spoke with the county librarian, I spoke with Mick Kennedy, who painted the building, whom I know 30 years. The enthusiasm and the passion that they all spoke with, it wasn't just a job. They're all passionate about something exciting that's been done. What was meant to be 30 minutes became hours. Having coffee with people, just living their lives, hoping we would do right by them. Can we put aside the political difference and the craziness around this? Yeah, I became involved because I was frustrated by a judicial review that's going to cost young couples thousands on their homes unless we hear otherwise. But there's more at stake. There are facilities ready to be handed over, ready to be used by the women having coffee, the young people in the gym, the mothers using the Pilates who want more room, and the man quietly reading in the library. Let's get Balliscouse open for what it was intended and for what the people want. And don't anyone tell me they knocked on doors, so did I. And don't anyone tell me they met the locals, so did I. Thanks.
Is the motion agreed? Roll call vote.
The results of the vote are green, yes, 23, yellow, abstain, 1, red, no, 13.
Item 2, confirmation and reaffirmation of the minutes of the council meeting held on Monday the 12th of May 2025. Proposed. Councillor Gearns, yeah.
Just, can I take it that the meeting administrator and yourself have agreed the agenda? And if that's the case, will you be allowing my motion to be heard alongside Councillor O'Brien's when it comes to the motion you disallowed on me last month?
So the meeting administrator and I have not agreed the agenda. I don't agree the agenda beforehand with the meeting administrator. The meeting administrator puts the items on the agenda. Your motion is not on the agenda?
No, but Councillor O'Brien's is, and it's the same type of motion, so I want to know if you're allowing his this time.
So Councillor O'Brien's motion is on the agenda, and when we get to that, we'll make a decision on that agenda.
So we can't take it that it's agreed, that it's in order.
So I'll make the decision on when we come to that item on the agenda. Thanks.
Sorry, Mayor, point of order. At the last OPNF meeting, Councillor Mulligan said that a motion brought by Councillor Murphy was out of order, and your reply was, if a motion is on the agenda, it's in order. Why is it different in full council meetings?
I'll make a decision. I'll discuss it with her afterwards. What we'll do is we'll go from there. But the minutes are accurate reflection of the meeting as took place. Okay.
So you won't tell me if I should prepare for the motion coming back up. You see, this is what I'm asking.
Your motion isn't on the agenda, so. Councillor Tormey.
I just find it very strange that we have an agenda in front of us. That should be the agenda. I raised issues last month, actually separate issues in relation to the statutory and non-statutory motions and what got put where. So that has been flagged with you, that the agenda does need to be reviewed before the meeting. And now you've thrown up in the air that a motion may or may not be taken. So I think it's really important that it is clarified in the interests of the meeting what the agenda is. And what's going, and whether or not you're going to, on a whim, just rule something out of order.
I think that's a reasonable question, and I would never rule something out in relation to a whim. It's on record, my explanation as to what it was, and it was in relation to the final decision of the Mayor, and that it was circumstances not covered by the previous motion. So that stands there, but I've made no ruling on Councillor O'Brien's motion as of yet, and we can look at that when we come to it. All right? Thank you. Councillor O'Brien.
Thanks, Mayor. Yeah, just to speak in support of Councillor Gearan, and it's troubling to me to hear that there is no supervision of the agenda alongside the meeting's administrator. That is one of the fundamentals of your role. And there are a number of us here who've chaired area meetings, who've chaired this council. When an item goes on an agenda, by its very nature, it's in order. The time to rule it out of order is before the agenda is published. Councillor Gearan's motion was on at least 2 previous agendas before the ruling you made last month, which I know and I believe to be an absolute incorrect ruling, Mayor. Unfair, undemocratic, incorrect. And I think you should really reflect on that before we go forward, because it is not the job of anybody in the chair of an SPC, of a county council meeting, or of an area to decide an item published on the agenda may not be heard. You took away Councillor Gearan's democratic right to raise that motion last month, and I think you can correct it when my motion comes around, and I'm asking you to strongly consider doing that, because the precedent you set, and it is a precedent because I'm 18 years nearly in this chamber. I'm actually 18 years this month in this chamber. I've never seen an item on an agenda ruled out of order during the meeting. The time to rule a motion out of order is before the agenda is published. That is the advice that anybody who has chaired meetings of this council or area meetings is offered by corporate, because that's the accurate advice. And I'm asking you strongly to consider allowing Councillor Gearan's motion from last month back on when we get down to my item. Thank you, Mayor.
Thanks, Councillor O'Brien. Confirmation and reaffirmation of the minutes of the council meeting question 3 to 20, or is that agreed? Questions 3 to 21. Proposed. Seconded, Councillor Walsh. Item 22, report of the Hope Malahide Services B Area Committee meeting held on Wednesday the 4th of June 2025. Report of Committee B, report of Corporate Policy Group CPG held on Wednesday the 4th of June 2025. Proposed. Seconded Councillor Walsh. Item 23, no financial matters. Is there no proposed disposal of properties? Declaration of roads, item 25A, Anley Estate, Ongar, Dublin 15. Proposed. Seconded. B, Stralham Estate, Ongar, Dublin 15. And seconded, Councillor Kitt. Item C, Ongar Park, Public Green Area, Dublin 15. And seconded, Councillor Kitt. Item 26, Planning and Development Act 2000, Part 11 as amended, regulations, public realm improvements and active travel measures for Skerries Harbour Road and Red Island in Skerries. We have a presentation from Sinead Murphy and Brian Doris.
Okay, good evening. I'm here to present the Chief Executive's report and the recommendations following the statutory consultation on the Skerries Harbour Road public realm and Red Island loop for Skerries. And I'm here with the Director Dave Story, Sinead Murphy, Senior Engineer, myself, Brian Doris, Senior Executive Engineer who's been managing the project, and Sean Lennon, Executive Engineer, and our consultants are also here, Clifton Scannell Emerson. Skerries Harbour Road, public realm, and I suppose this is just the timeline of the project. I have a lot of information here, so I'm going to go through it quite quickly because there's been a lot of consultation on this. We appointed the consultants, Clifton Scannell Emerson, in Q3 22. Traffic and topographical surveys done in Q3 22. Concept design started discussion with elected members Q4 22. The first internal briefing Q2 23 and numerous local councillor briefings during 2024. We did a non-statutory engagement, workshops and stakeholder engagement at Q4 24. Submitted the pre-planning application Q4 24. Finalised pre-planning application Q1 25 of this year. Consultation report and made the amendments to the detailed design. And then councillor briefings again in Q1 and commenced the Part A planning process Q1 25. And here we are in the council chamber to make the decision on June 25. In the pre-planning process, we did a non-statutory public consultation. The workshops were held in September. There was numerous workshops with businesses, with residents, with harbour users, with community groups. All the dates are there, and you got this pack last week, I believe. And then an open day for the general public in 26th of September. They were facilitated by MCO consultants with Clifton Scannell Emerson and our own team here from Fingal County Council. A number of concerns and issues raised at that stage. Again, I'll just be brief here. Parking loss and impact on businesses and accessibility. Residents raised issues with regard to on-street parking. Improvements in walkability between the parking areas and the businesses. The cycle lane links at Red Island. Truck turning movements and pedestrian safety at the pier area. Also the lighting or otherwise and the preservation of the dark skies, particularly at the back of Red Island. Impacts on nature, biodiversity and loss of open green space on Red Island, and the loading bay and adjustment to same. The design, there was quite a bit there, so the design was updated to address these concerns, and the non-statutory process summary report was published in Q1 of 25, including all those changes. In terms of the statutory consultation, then we moved on. A public notice was published in the Irish Independent to start that process 4th of March 25, and site notices were erected on the same date. The public display period, the documents were made available for inspection from the 4th of March 25 right through to the 17th of April 25, and they were available here in County Hall, also in Skerries Public Library, and the information all available online also, as is the normal way. In terms of the internal planning report, we issued all the documents to the internal stakeholders here in Fingal County Council. Each of the various different departments outlined there, some with no comments, some with items to note, and some minor items were noted by various departments and were included again in the detailed design report. In terms of the EIA, Environmental Impact Assessment and Appropriate Assessment screenings, Fingal County Council engaged Brady Shipman Martin to carry out an examination of the development for the purposes of EIA and AA screening. And on the basis and the review of those reports, Fingal County Council determined that an appropriate assessment under Article 6 of the Habitats Directive was not required, and Fingal determined on the basis of those reports that an environmental impact assessment was not required. Some of the public submissions and observations that were made, there was 158 submissions and observations to this statutory consultation. 725 issues were raised in those submissions. Some of them had numerous issues to raise, some of them had fewer, but we themed them and it came down to 18 themes. We categorised them, it came down to 18 themes. And many of those issues that were raised in the non-statutory public consultation earlier on were echoed again in the statutory consultation, and many had already been addressed in the updated design. And a full summary of the key issues raised under each of the themes and the associated responses are available in Appendix D of the Chief Executive's report, which was issued to you last week. Here are the themes that were identified: support for the scheme, concerns about the scheme's impacts, issues with regard to the sailing club, general concerns with regard to parking and accessibility, traffic management, safety issues, comments on pedestrian access and accessibility, disabled and age-friendly parking provision and provisions of loading bays, taxi rank issues, cycling facilities, public realm and urban design enhancements, emergency services access, concern for outdoor or support for outdoor dining, issues with regard to antisocial behaviour, environmental enhancements, heritage and protected structures, and issues with FCC procedures and other general comments. This just gives an idea of how we themed up. Each and every submission was given a number and was tagged essentially to one of those themes. So that's the way the report looks, and that's just to assist you in understanding how the report can be read. This is an example of some of the support that was given to us for the project. I'll just give maybe a spot few of these: improved cycle infrastructure, traffic calming measures, outdoor dining, public realm investment in Skerries. So there was a number of different positive comments made there. Some of the concerns raised, this is one in relation to the sailing club and access to the slipway on the Harbour Road, issues with regard to potential obstruction to the main slipway, the set down areas for transporting boats and gear or other group participants, and seeking a dedicated safe corridor to allow conflict-free movement of the trailers and the boats across the Harbour Road. And then there was a lot of issues raised with regard to peak activities requiring flexibility, such as regatta times and so on. This is the response to a number of those issues that were raised. Significant improvement to the existing situation, and we've been very clear on the before and after situation and the improvements in the safety on that. A widened proposed safe corridor for small and medium boats, and a widened footpath and proposed well areas and crossings at the slipway. There's traffic calmed 30 kph zones, ramps and raised crossings. Also clear unobstructed routes with sufficient width and turning space for vehicles. Also, slipway facilitates, the area directly opposite the slipway facilitates temporary storage of equipment and to support staging during high activity periods during the summer. And also detailed design will investigate further measures to indicate a shared zone on the Harbour Road, identifying this as a corridor for larger boats. And also the proposed scheme includes space adjacent to the Sea Scouts on Dorn Lane to facilitate pick-up and drop-off equipment. That gives just a bit of an indication as to the current situation on the left there and the proposed situation on the right with the widened footpath on the east side, which makes it a lot safer to bring the boats along there and directly across the road to the slipway. Examples of some other concerns raised with regard to parking removal and accessibility: perceived negative impacts on local businesses and impact on elderly or less mobile groups. And the response was the existing seafront parking that we have there at the moment is substandard with narrow bays and poor pedestrian access. Overall number of parking spaces across the scheme remains unchanged, albeit in slightly different areas. ESRI have been involved with us, their behavioural research unit, on a project in Skerries, and have undertaken some review of active travel schemes both nationally and internationally, and they've concluded that these schemes have a neutral or a positive impact on businesses. Centrally located drop-off zones enable passengers to disembark safely and conveniently before vehicles are parked in the nearby Red Island car parks. There's new on-street parking. There's 36 age-friendly spaces and 13 wheelchair-accessible spaces to assist people in those cohorts. And on-street parking spaces preserved outside all residential areas on Harbour Road. That just gives an indication of new on-street parking and pedestrian connectivity adjacent to the pier entrance, and also we did a walk time map showing the businesses at the top of Harbour Road and the accessibility within 2 minutes from the first car park on Red Island. More issues raised: proposed loading bays, inconvenient location of proposed loading zones, and multiple submissions expressed concerns that the proposed layout reduces the number or availability of dedicated loading bays for businesses operating along the Harbour Road. In summary, or in response, existing loading bays are insufficient to accommodate the loading needs of the business on the Harbour Road and frequently cause congestion and hamper visibility, as you can see. And the proposed loading bay is positioned to ensure convenient access for all businesses and provide a safe environment for pedestrians and cyclists. And it's important to note that there's no change in the current loading practices on the lane to the rear of the businesses. Other issues raised relating to the public consultation: poor consultation or perceived lack of engagement. There's been very, very significant engagement on this project, both formal and informal, and we've also had a two-stage process, including non-statutory consultation and the statutory consultation, which is concluding here today. Ongoing consultation with local councillors at the various stages during the scheme development, and this input was incorporated into the design. And during the non-statutory phase, the council engaged extensively, as I've already outlined. There was quite a number of attendees there and focus groups there. And obviously the statutory Part 8 consultation, which we're doing here, and it's summarised in the Appendix D of the Chief Executive's report, which you have in your packs. While it's not feasible to meet every individual preference, the final design is sought to balance competing needs, and we made considerable changes to the design in this regard. Relocated turning areas was something that was also raised, and in response, the existing turning area for vehicles at the pier leads to potential conflicts in an area around which it's heavily used by pedestrians. And the proposed scheme includes a new purpose-designed turning area located at the entrance of the first car park. It will improve safety and reduce the risk of conflicts between vehicles and pedestrians, and it has been tested through what we call a swept path analysis to ensure it accommodates the needs of all current loading operations. And I have here a series of photographs just before and after, an artist's impression in the after one, which kind of gives a good indication of how the scheme will look when it's complete. That's Dorn Lane. This one is Harbour Road, not far from Dorn Lane there, and you can see some of the greening up there, the widened footpath on the east side. That's Harbour Road before and after. Again, a footpath on the left-hand side of the harbour area, giving an unobstructed view there, and then the shared surface for cyclists and cars. The pier entrance, public realm improvements there before and after. Pier entrance from a different angle, before and after, looking down. And this is the Red Island Loop at the Captain's, before and after, and there are some dwell areas there with seating and so on. And that's the Red Island Loop again at the Springers, and this is at the beachfront, before and after. And in summary, the Chief Executive's recommendation is that the Council proceed with the development as proposed. And I'm happy to take your questions.
Councillor Dennison.
Thank you, Mayor. A very important project, not just for Skerries, but for Fingal. And I wonder, could we have the first slide up again? because sometimes people complain about how long it takes for local authorities to roll out projects, and you can see from that the consultants were on site in Q3 2022, and I'm sure the whole project goes back long before that. So just obviously there's been extensive consultation, as you say, and no matter apropos our earlier discussion about Donabate, there will always be people who have concerns, and there are some businesses along the Harbour Road there who do have concerns. So I just wonder, maybe, I know you covered them in the report, but if you could come back just in relation to parking, particularly in the winter time for elderly people, and secondly, the concerns particularly in the summertime, that there would be large groups gathering along the harbour, lots of outdoor drinking. I know there was a time when we had the Joint Policing Committee and we could address those sort of things. We don't have that now, and obviously we don't want to be making more work for the Gardaí and that, so just maybe you'd come back on that.
Councillor O'Brien.
Thanks, Mayor, and thanks for the presentation, and indeed the briefings that were offered to members also. This is a really exciting project, so just want to say well done to the design team. These are leaps in terms of our public realm and facilitation of active travel that are going to transform our towns and villages. I know that across the county we're always seeking improvements, and Mr. Story is sick of hearing from us when we're looking for things. So it's great to see such a plan coming forward after all the work as outlined. I do want to particularly pay tribute to the former Skerries councillor, Shauna O'Ruddy, who I know pushed very hard for this while she was mayor and during her term as councillor. So it's great to see such improvements to Skerries, a place that we all know very well, and very fond of Skerries, love going there, and I think this will only be a massive improvement for residents and visitors alike. So well done, and I look forward to supporting it.
Councillor Ryan.
Thanks, Mayor. I will not be supporting this Part 8 motion today. I've been trying to get Mr. Story and his team to change tack since I joined the council in June 2023, but obviously we're here today and to no avail. I will provide some active travel context. The Fingal Coastal Way is due to pass through Skerries at the foot of this harbour road. An active travel plan is currently being worked on for all of Skerries, so there is no shortage of cycling and pedestrian infrastructure when all this is in place. By the way, following wide consultation, it was decided that Fingal Coastal Way would not go up Harbour Road and around Red Island for very sound reasons. I live in Skerries and I understand how the harbour area works. It's important to remember that it is a working harbour. It is also the hospitality centre of the town. It is also the prime location for water sports and activities. To most observers, the proposal looks great, and it does indeed. The problem is the impacts it will have on activities there. All of the businesses are against it. Workers in the area are against it. Older and less able customers of restaurants are against it. Residents are against it. Sailing club members are against it. The Sea Scouts are against it. The rowing club is against it. RNLI members have made submissions against it. All are opposed to it and feel that they have not been listened to. There were 113 submissions against the proposal. There were 31 submissions for it. Others have felt that there was no point in making a submission to be ignored by the council, and these are their comments, not mine. Think about what's happening here. The groups that are to be impacted have told the council in 2 separate consultations now of how the proposals will impact them negatively. The response from the council is that they are wrong and they are pushing ahead with it. They are effectively telling business people that they don't understand their own business and that the council knows better. The proposal solves no identified problem but creates many for those people and organisations. It's predominantly a public realm project with limited additional impact in relation to active travel. There will be no reduction in cars passing through the Harbour Road. Red Island is already an extremely important and popular area for walkers and joggers. People already cycle there and around the head. Councillor O'Leary cycles there, I've seen him there. It's an important green amenity enjoyed by families, residents and visitors alike. This proposal reduces that green space considerably by the cycleway and the additional parking. Now, when the Fingal Coastal Way will go along South Strand Promenade, there will be further erosion of amenities, green space on the seafront. Now, we can't do anything about that here because that will go to Mbal. I think if you could bear with me for a moment, Mayor, and this, I'm just coming to an end. With the Fingal Coastal Way due to go along the South Strand Promenade, there will be further erosion of amenity green space on the seafront. So we can't take this decision without looking ahead at what's due to happen with Fingal Coastal Way. Are we to give up all our green space to cycling infrastructure? I walk that route across the head regularly. That's my active travel, and the active travel for many. I don't cycle. So what happens if we reject the proposal today? And I think we should. This plan dies, but the area will then form part of the active travel plan for Skerries, and a less impactful plan for this part of Skerries can be worked upon. Mr. Story has told me more than once that he's not overly concerned and he will use the money to fund other projects. And I think there are projects that need to be done with greater priority than this. Some of the positive public realm stuff, like widening the footpaths on the hospitality side, can be delivered in a more holistic plan for all of Skerries, and that's my sense of what the decision we should take here today.
So I have a motion has come just a minute ago from Councillor Ryan. Have you a seconder for that motion? Seconder, Councillor Boland. Do you want to put? Can we put the motion up there? Yeah.
It just annoys me the way that we bring in motions in the middle of a debate. So we should have all the speakers speak and then go to the motions.
I think that's an excellent idea. So, but it has literally just come to me, and as it comes in, I'd put it up on the piece so that people are aware of it. Okay, Councillor.
Ostensibly, this work that's going to be carried out on the Red Loop is going to benefit the majority of people that visit Red Island. But we have to be cognizant of the people that have businesses there, that live there, and are there 365 days of the year. Issues have been raised in regards to the winter. It's a cold place, Red Island, during the winter. The only people that would be using them businesses are the local community of Skerries. During the summer, the standing room only. In relation to, Councillor Dennison has raised a very valid point in relation to antisocial behaviour and public drinking. That carries on right now. That's happening right now. They're taking cans out of the back of cars. But what I would say in retort to that is that if we're removing cars from that area of Red Island, we're reducing the possibility of people being able to take them cans out of the back of cars and, for the want of a better word, publicly drinking. They're not using the businesses in the area. So I think that argument doesn't have any, it's not valid. We're improving the area by reducing the car park spaces there. But we also need to be constant that people live there. People live there and people walk there. So what I'd say here is that we do have a transportation and active travel survey that's taking place in Skerries, and I want to ask the question if I can get a response back. If we pass this motion today, is it the feeling of the management that this survey, active travel survey, will benefit from the passing of this motion? And I just want to raise the possibility of the moving of the slipway from Skerries Sailing Club to align with the entrance to the sailing club. in the interest of even greater safety. And I am cognizant that the council have gone to the nth degree to improve the safety of that area, and I do recognise that. Thank you very much.
Councillor Healy.
Cormac de Vera. Obviously, I'm not a local councillor, but I have had the pleasure of visiting Skerries on a number of occasions as mayor, when I was there, also with former Councillor Power, and being shown around what is really a lovely town, and I say that as somebody from Howth. I was surprised at Harbour Road, at the area on the harbour when I was there. I found it to be an environment hostile to people on foot, hostile in particular, I think, to children and older people, and prioritising car parking over safety and comfort. And the design that's come up here is reversing that. It's prioritising the public realm, it's making more open space, but it is facilitating the harbour uses. What it isn't facilitating, I suppose, is an environment where people are forced to walk in the carriageway, which I don't think we can be continuing anywhere in Fingal. Active Travel, I think, here have come up with a good design, and as they have done elsewhere, and I'm very happy to support it.
Councillor Newman.
Thanks, Mayor. I won't be too long. Yeah, I was attending a presentation online the other day, and I'm just speaking because I've had some emails and people not necessarily not supportive of the public realm as proposed. But I did raise the questions at the online meeting with Brian there, and I am quite happy that the questions I had in relation to loading bays, parking for local residents have been dealt with. And, you know, I think just listening to Councillor Quinn there about drinking on the street, I think we talked about received some assurance that there would be some enforcement in the area to ensure that we don't have, you know, on-street drinking. As such, the business can still operate. People can access them. I think, as you know, Councillor Healy says, I have to agree with his summation there about it being a benefit to the whole of Skerries. I was impressed with the that you introduced the priority cycling on you know, the special colouring on the road. I think that affords a lot of safety to children and people on bikes. I think down in the harbour you mentioned that there would be cyclists can go down, there'll be signage there, and you possibly might reduce the speed limit on that road. So hopefully the loading for businesses can be carried out at times that maybe at sorry, I'm just being a bit distracted by Councillor Gearan walking in front of me while I'm talking here. Thanks, Councillor Gearan. And so I just wanted, you know, people of Skerries to know that I did listen, I did ask the questions, but I am supporting the objective. Thanks.
Councillor Murphy.
Thanks, Mayor, and thanks very much for the presentation. It's a very, very conflicting piece of business when you have a high percentage of people who are on the consultation portal suggesting that it's flawed, it has problems, and it's challenging. And I think most of the submissions are coming in from the sporting entities and the businesses, and I can understand there's always going to be concern when you remove parking from an area, as Councillor Quinn has suggested that during the winter, and you're sitting on the coastline there and in inclement weather, it's not conducive to walking as much as people might think. And I'm struggling with some of the design on it. To be honest with you, I have a few questions here. I want to know what the net value of parking spaces are removed. So what was the initial amount of parking, and what are we now reduced to in proximity to the businesses? I also want to know, in the set down area, which I know is a compromise, and it's a good compromise, but how many cars can set down at one particular time in the set down area? Is it 1, 2, 3 or 4? Again, I think the slipway location, I understand why it isn't in this proposal, but I think it's something that we should look into the future in the overall context of making it safer and making it closer to the sailing club. And I think, again, there's another omission in it personally, and I don't know if it's been listed in the submissions. The toilet block, I think, should have been moved because it sits in a very awkward space and detracts from the vista across the road. So, look, we've spoken about antisocial behaviour. That's going to be a measured piece of business. It's a Garda issue if there is antisocial behaviour with regards, we're talking about drinking in a public space, and that can be addressed, I think, if it does appear. But I have to be honest and say that I'm conflicted on this piece of business. Thank you.
Councillor Maguire.
Thank you, Mayor. Again, it's always something that comes to us, and the majority will always put forward their submissions as to why they don't want it, and we sometimes have the silent minority. In this case, I have been heartened to see submissions and emails come to me directly from both sides. When this was first briefed to us at an area meeting, the words I used was that safety should be our priority. And I would visit Skerries on a regular basis, and there was one of the days, it wasn't a great day, the majority of people was walking on the road coming from the ice cream shop or coming from up at Red Island. That is not safety. We're not looking after the thing that we should, and that's the safety concerns. Because they were walking because there wasn't enough room on the path on the right-hand side, and there was no path on the left-hand side. There was only parked cars. I do appreciate that there is a hell of an awful lot of people affected by having no parking spaces outside their houses. There will be elderly people that will have to park around the corner and walk. On a winter's day, you know, it's not conducive to have nobody parking anywhere and businesses shut. One of the questions I want, the set down area, can that be a permanent parking space in the winter? Could that be, you know, something to look at? We talk about the street drinking, and as somebody said, it's already happening now, but it's happening amongst parked cars. That's not safe. We need to address that issue, but that issue is not only the responsibility of Fingal, it's a Garda issue. We need signs, no drinking in a public space. But that also brings another issue, in that the businesses can't have outdoor dining or outdoor drinking on the path. So there's a two-piece there. If you do one for one, it has to affect everybody. You know, traffic calming measures, the crossing points. You've mentioned all the very positive things. There's no change in parking spaces as far as I'm aware. You've said whatever has been taken out on Harbour Road, parking has been put into up at Red Island. I think that's more of where I am. To be fair, I think it's a really good job. It'll make the place a very safe environment for anybody that travels, whether you're on foot, cycle or in a car. The last question was the turning point. Can you just explain that one to me again? Because, like Councillor Murphy, those toilets should be gone. That should be a much more open space, but we are where we are. I think it would be a much safer space around the ice cream shop, but it is unfortunate, like every presentation, like every consultation, we can't please everybody. But I think we have come a long way from the start of the consultation till today in finding a happy medium that should work for the majority of people that will use that area. Thank you.
Councillor Butler.
Yeah, no, listen, thank you very much for the presentation. Most of what I was going to say has been covered, I suppose, particularly by Councillor Dennison. You noted, I suppose, with regards to the sailing club and regatta and the turning bay, so I just want to get clarified that you're satisfied that what you are putting in place there in terms of, I suppose, a safer turning bay, safer way, particularly on busy days and regattas, that they will be sufficiently able to go about their business as part of this. Yeah, you've also mentioned, I suppose, obviously a concern for businesses and loading bays. So I suppose I just want to get clarification with regards to the set down bays, as Councillor Maguire mentioned there, that they're covered. I suppose obviously, yeah, just as part of any of these plans, thinking of myself in not too many years, but in terms of kind of elderly residents as well, in terms of just if you could just advise us regards to, I suppose, safe parking for elderly residents who may not be able to walk the longer distances. If just you could come back to us on those three issues. Thank you.
Councillor O'Leary.
Thank you. Before I start, could I have well, there's the picture now. The picture showing the boats accessing the slipway from Skerries Sailing Club. I see my clock is moving there, but anyway. Yeah, you had, no? Yes, Grant. Okay, thanks. Okay, I've lived in Skerries for 60 plus years. I walk around here. I do walk every day for an hour, and mostly around here and other areas. I haven't cycled for a year. I did cycle after being on a trip to Netherlands, but I don't feel safe doing it on the streets of Skerries. That's another day's work, and this would greatly improve that. It's not all about me. There's 156 submissions, 31 were for it. Some submissions weren't all against it, were asking for changes. I acknowledge the concerns of my friends that I know for years in the hospitality business. So at the start of this, I'm going to tell you I'm voting for this, and I have reasons for voting for this, and I've arrived at a conclusion to vote for it, and I'm comfortable doing it. At Skerries Sailing Club, as you can see there now, right now they go, picture on the left, and there's kids involved and adults involved, and it's dangerous. On a busy day, that's what they have to do. On the right now, they'll be able to go into a protected walking zone, an extended footpath, head for the slipway and cross the road safely with a pedestrian crossing nearby. So there's about 30, 40, I don't think there's more, submissions for Sailing Club asking for safe access to the slipway. They're getting it. That's my view anyway, they're getting it. Should we move to slipway? Maybe. I have a motion down next Thursday at the area meeting. I don't expect it to happen. It's going to take a long time. We're going to have an urban plan for Skerries, and I hope that we can put it into that and we can look at that. But that's a long shot, being frank about it. So I'm confident that the Sailing Club concerns will be addressed. It's certainly much better than what they have now, big time. And the Sea Scouts are similar. They're further up the road. They can use a wide footpath, go down the road with their canoes, which are smaller, and get onto that slipway. Now they hump them over a wall. They send someone out to block the traffic and hump the canoe over the wall. So this is a great improvement. Parking opposite the hospitality businesses, I am conflicted on this because I park there and I like parking there. However, sometimes with my two granddaughters, aged 3 and 4, these car spaces were there before any regulations were ever invented or whatever. There's no footpath to step onto. You must alight into oncoming traffic from 2 directions. However, I fear losing my wing mirrors. I fear opening my door and upending a cyclist. I fear, worse, a car taking my door off, or a truck, delivery truck. But worst of all, I fear one of my granddaughters making a bolt to cross the road and ending up under a car. That nearly happened one day when Mammy was spotted across the road, suddenly on the far side. My 3-year-old granddaughter was making a bolt for Mammy and could not see or hear anything else. My heart was in my mouth and I had to grab her from running under a car. That's the reality of the parking along there. And I do like parking there, but it's not a safe place for kids and strange kids coming there, visitors who don't know what goes on there. The locals do, but it's not a safe place either for older folk, same reason. The spaces are too narrow. You have to try and wiggle in there. Sometimes my passenger door gets blocked, the passenger can't get out, because if I don't stay within the white line, I get a ticket. So these spaces, while they're there, been there for years, are not fit for purpose. Yeah, sure, there's drinking on that side of the road in busy times during the summer. So I saw a Cork car recently trying to reverse into 2 people who were sitting on the fence having a pint. 3, 4 times trying to reverse in without driving over their toes. That's what's going on there. And yes, Malachy Quinn makes a good point about cars and dropping off cans and all that sort of stuff. So cars there are facilitating that. And I am conflicted about it, but I'm arriving at the conclusion that we should move those cars. We're keeping the same amount of car spaces. We're putting in new car spaces around the corner, right close to this area. We're keeping some car spaces outside there. You see one there on the disabled blue spot. We're keeping 5 there. They're all age friendly. A lot of older folk use that. Stoops restaurant there. So all in all, I think we're doing well on the car spaces. On Red Island, we're putting in, you saw the pictures, much better cycling and walking paths. I do want to cycle and walk there. I want to walk there. But I do want to cycle there with my 2 granddaughters. Why not? Why can't I? Why shouldn't I? Why shouldn't everyone else? Why shouldn't the 70-year-old man I met in Downside who got knocked off his bicycle cycle down and around Skerries safely? Because he wants to, because it's the healthy thing to do. It's the good thing for his mental health. It's the good thing for his physical health. I used to do it as a young fella, delivering papers there twice a day, 6 days a week. So why can't we do it? We can. We have wide streets, bring in active travel. This is a wonderful plan. It's a wonderful plan for the visitors in Skerries. It's a wonderful plan for the locals in Skerries. And I know some locals are worried about it. But I'm taking the leap of faith here, having lived there 60 years. I think it's a great plan for Skerries, and I'm going to vote for it. And I'd ask you all to take that into account and consider voting for it, please. Thank you.
Councillor Tormey.
Thank you very much. I find myself similarly very conflicted on this project. I do visit Skerries, one of my favourite restaurants is there. But I have been contacted about a lot of the issues which have been named already, from the sailing club, the loss of the loading bays, the loss of the parking. I'm generally absolutely not in favour of the anti-car agenda. However, I do recognise and always put safety first. So those parking spaces are dangerous for people. So therefore, it is, the right thing to do is to act in the safety of those people. And I personally regard this more as like a public realm project than an active travel project, and I hate the way the two of them get interchanged when I think Skerries does need a lot of work to it, because it's a great spot and it can be a lot better. With regards to the plans for the parking changes, it references more age-friendly parking. My understanding is that they are not policeable, and I thought we had moved away from them as a council. Certainly my understanding within the Hoth Malahide area was that we weren't doing them anymore. So can you just get some clarification about that? Because I do think it is valid about, elderly people who do need a car for mobility being able to park appropriately. And then my big concern as well about this is just the legal issues surrounding it, and I'm just really, really sick of a lot of the council's projects being legally challenged and the cost to the taxpayer. And so it is disappointing where you do have issues that have been raised by people that we haven't done kind of more to try and address that. My other concern as well is just the fact that a lot of us were placed on notice a long, long time ago with regards to the lack of LAPs in a lot of areas in the county that need them. And it was found in the courts that we weren't compliant with the Planning and Development Act, which I raised during the development plan process, that there were a lot of areas that qualified. If you just read the criteria for LAPs that weren't listed, and Skerries is one of them. So I'm just wondering if there's any legal risks or anything in the way that would threaten this Part 8 process by pushing this through, because I find myself often just going around the houses, like I read the legislation, then I get told it was Planning and Development Act, and then also on another project, the Road Traffic Act as well, being told I basically can't read when I can. And I think we just need to be very, very clear about how we are proceeding about this. So I just want to get advice on that. Thank you very much.
Councillor Hopkins.
Thank you. I will 100% be voting in favour of this project, and I'm not in the slightest bit conflicted. I just think if you were ever had, the two areas put in front of you and you said, pick one if you were starting again, and it's the after one for sure. So I'd just like to thank all the staff who have worked on this project. I know how hard you work. I know how difficult it is when you're trying to retrofit around an existing town or village and trying to take all the stakeholders into consideration. I think you do an incredible job with that. Obviously, there are always issues with supporting businesses and residents and loading bays and all of that kind of good stuff. And I trust you that you will do the best you can with that. Just in terms of, like, I think we've all been to other countries, you know, particularly if you go anywhere like, you know, around Spain, that they have pedestrianised so many places, and businesses thrive and communities thrive. And particularly, you know, we often talk about older people and car parking spaces. And my mum will kill me for saying this because she's 89, she's still driving her car and she likes to go right near wherever she needs to be. And good for her. But she will get to a stage, and lots of people, older people do, where they need mobility scooters, where actually they would be using their towns and villages a lot more if we weren't so car-centric. A lot of people, once they can't get in the car, they're just like staying in their homes. So I think we do need to make sure we're looking after all of our citizens. But I think this is a fantastic plan. We will have teething problems, but I wish you all the best of luck. Thank you.
Councillor Gearan.
Yeah, I have to say I read up on this and I did a bit of work, and I'd like to thank Councillor Ryan because he sent us out the information, and I wouldn't have paid as much attention to the submissions, only he did, and I'm appreciative of that. And I do believe there were mixed views. There were those opposed to it, very opposed to it, supportive and very supportive. And I was in two minds. If you could put a picture up there, till one of the letters I got from a resident, and they said to me, look at the people, look how safe it is, why do we need to change it? And all I could see was cars everywhere. And I said to myself, that highlights the danger that people are facing. And what's proposing is chalk and cheese to that. So yeah, there's no pain without gain. You can't make an egg without breaking omelets. I congratulate Active Travel for that. I really do. I think it is a super project that you've come up with, and I'm particularly pleased with your 35 spaces for aged friendly parking. So good luck with it, thank you, and I'll be supportive. Thank you.
Councillor Boland.
Thank you very much, Mayor. I just did want to say to the team, I have seen this proposal twice now at this stage, and I really do appreciate all the work that's gone into it, a very comprehensive breakdown of everything. And while I do recognise there's been a huge number of submissions, the figure is 150 and there has been 30 in support of it, I do feel it is appropriate to also acknowledge the good parts of this, which some of our other councillors have mentioned, like Councillor Maguire, in terms of safety and what it is going to bring to the area. I am somebody who has eaten regularly in that area, been down there, been down to see sporting events as well, and I understand all of those that come in. But a project like this is setting an example for not only Skerries but the entire of Fingal, and I think this is something that has to be noted, and the future would be bright with a project like this, especially in terms of the safety and what it is going to bring for people going down to that area. Thank you very much.
From my own point of view, climate change and active travel is a component. Active travel is an essential component of working towards a world that we're less reliant on cars and petrol, and the emissions as well from walking and cycling are much lower even than electric cars. And you know, it's something that has been a cornerstone of whatever that I've done as a councillor. I respect Councillor Ryan a huge amount, and I also know that, having gone on a number of active travel or active transport trips, that everywhere that we go where there is change, whether it be in Holland or anywhere else, there's no, these usually don't go in particularly easily, and there's often quite an amount of genuine concern over aspects, and it can be very difficult to come up with a scheme that absolutely pleases everybody, and that everybody would say there isn't something that would be better being changed about it, or that we could. But I think the direction of travel is one where we really do need to improve the network, and the more people that are out using bikes instead of cars and able to walk, and creating safe destinations is a huge part of that, to be able to get somewhere where you're going to feel relaxed. And I think, notwithstanding all of the representations that have been made to me, I think this is a scheme that I think Skerries will be proud of in years to come, and it really will form an addition. And I think it's also something that we're looking to do across the county. I've strongly supported measures like these in my own local area, and I think that it would be inconsistent of me not to support something very similar, because it'd be difficult for me to come to councillors in other areas the next time I'm looking for something to support if I'm not prepared to support it in their areas as well. So I'd like to strongly support this. I think it's an excellent proposal. We have, I'll ask the manager or Mr. Story to come in and maybe respond to some of the questions and queries, and then we'll move to taking the motion.
Thanks, Mayor. I might just make a couple of general comments, and then I'll get Sinead and Brian to come in. Just generally about active travel, I would commend this council for being one of the most proactive councils in the local authority. Over the last number of years, we have been very forward-thinking in our development plan, our climate action plan, and our active travel strategy. I think nearly every councillor in this chamber has come to me looking for active travel measures throughout the county to try and improve their community. In relation to the Skerries project, how the Skerries project came about and the active travel plan that is planned for Skerries and all the other towns was the local councillors came to us and asked us about consideration for a scheme in Harbour Road in the last council. And Councillor Dennison has raised about the time that it's taken to bring forward the scheme. We've had 4 briefings most recently. We've had 9 or 10 consultations around the scheme to bring it to where it is today, trying to take on board the views of everybody, whether that be the local councillors, the local traders, the residents, the senior citizens. And while we would try and achieve everything that everybody wants, sometimes it is just not possible to do that in the schemes. We have made a commitment that we are prioritising pedestrians and cyclists over cars in this chamber. My job as the Director of Active Travel is to try and bring those schemes to you for approval, for consideration. And I think in relation to this Skerries project, we have done an awful lot of what people have asked. It doesn't meet the demands of all the members that are here, but we've tried to do that as best we can with this proposal. I would like to see proposals like this across the whole county. If it was my opinion, there'd be no cars on Skerries on the Harbour Road, and there'd be no parking down in Red Island. But I then have to take into account what other people want and try and facilitate what's needed. So we have tried to do our best in the scheme. This will be a £5 or £6 million investment in Skerries. And I have made the comment to Councillor Ryan that this money could be invested anywhere. And I'm more than happy to stand over that, because there's other councillors in the chamber that want this type of investment in their local areas. But a decision was made by me as the director to support the local councillors who came to me at the time to go along with a proposal, and we've come up with this scheme. So I'm more than happy, obviously following Sinead and Brian, we'll go through the issues, more than happy to put forward a scheme for consideration by the members this evening.
Thank you, members, and I'll just go through a number of the comments here one by one, and there's a number of the technicalities and the number crunching on the parking, which I'll hand over to my colleague Brian Doris. And Councillor Dennison raised the issue with regard to the timelines being of importance, and yes, I suppose it just does show, while this in the size is not an enormously complex project, it has taken quite considerable time to come to this stage, and a lot of effort and a lot of public consultation. Issues were raised by Councillor Dennison and a lot of other councillors about antisocial behaviour being raised as a problem. in the context of this project, and I suppose we do acknowledge that this is a problem before the project even starts and has been an issue that's been raised, and I suppose we need to look at the before and the after situation. And it has also been suggested that a number of people are drinking cans out of the back of cars, as well as perhaps taking pints of beer across the street, but a lot of them out of the back of cars. Obviously the cars will be gone, and that may change and alter the position and open up the walking and cycling, and that's on the harbour side for, I suppose, more passive surveillance and more people who will be walking and moving along at pace there, or, you know, right beside the harbour area. So maybe perhaps make it less conducive to behaviour, that sort of behaviour. We'll also be engaging during the detailed design phase with An Garda Síochána with regard to enforcement in that regard. Councillor O'Brien commended the scheme, and thanks for that, and also previous mayor acknowledged the support of the previous mayor to bring it along to where it's at the moment. Councillor Ryan has commented on the interlinking between a number of different other schemes, Fingal Coastal Way, which our colleagues in Planning and Strategic Infrastructure Department are progressing, and the active travel plan, with which we're progressing ourselves in the active travel unit. And I suppose it's very important to note that we have been engaging with colleagues in Planning and Strategic about the Fingal Coastal Way as it has evolved and as the design has been progressing and the consultation has been progressing all the way through, and will continue to do so, particularly in relation to the active travel plan for Skerries, which will provide a much broader network from one side of Skerries to the other, interlinking with this as with any other project, including the Fingal Coastal Way. So there is no shortage of work, as you say, in that regard proposed for Skerries, and we're ensuring that it's all really well connected up, because in essence that's what we want to finish here with, is a really good network across the whole town from beginning to end. The harbour area, Councillor Ryan has mentioned it being a working harbour and a hospitality place, a recreational place, and I think that's really well represented in the way that we structured the non-statutory consultation, in particular the working groups that we set up, and we went to great lengths to bring in fishermen from the harbour area, that was one focus group, and businesses from the harbour area and the recreational area. Also, there was a list of people there who were against the scheme, for example, Seasheads Rowing Club or in Ally. All of those people were also included in the consultation groups, and have made inputs to which informed a number of design changes which were made to the scheme. So a lot of the issues that were raised by those different groups have been taken in, as we say, into the first round of revisions. And then when we went to the statutory consultation, some tweaks there. Councillor Ryan mentioned the numbers, 113 submissions against and for. I can't remember the figures back there, but there was a very significant number of submissions, and hundreds of different categories of those submissions. So, for example, a submission may have had 6 issues of concern they raised and 3 issues that they liked, or another one may have had 2 issues of concern and 4 issues that they liked, or whatever, or one had no issues that they liked and 10 issues they didn't like. So it is very, and we've completely avoided doing the X amount for X amount or Y amount against, because it's almost impossible to do that. And in the numbers that I presented earlier on, I did outline that, the number of submissions that were made, the number of issues that were raised, and how we categorised them down into, I think it was the 18 themes. So we have avoided that definitively. We do that on all the projects. With regard to the businesses, nobody here is telling the businesses there how to run their business. And what we can say in that regard is we are seeking and always looking for scientific data, particularly from economists, behavioural economists, and economists who deal with issues of this regard. So we certainly are taking advice in terms of the ESRI review of all the studies of that nature. In this regard, I would carry a lot of weight to that advice. The amenities there with regard to Red Island and reducing green space. In some cases, I suppose that was one of the issues that came up with regard to the proximity of the spaces and the need to bring the age-friendly spaces a little bit closer to the Harbour Road, and that was one of the areas where we have built in some extra car park spacing, reducing that green space. But the whole thing enhanced generally the green space wherever possible. The widening of the footpaths is an issue that was also raised, but obviously it's been done on both sides of the harbour, and the one being key is probably on the harbour wall there. Councillor Quinn raised the issues of the benefits to the majority of people, and we certainly are looking at that, and it's a difficult one to ensure that we are hearing all the voices in an equitable way, which sometimes is a little bit difficult in these consultations. And being aware of the locals, again, we went out of our way in the non-statutory consultation to bring in the focus groups from each of them and hear their issues. And we are aware of the weather patterns and the situations there. It has been raised repeatedly in all the consultations we've had. You raised again the antisocial behaviour, which I've discussed, and moving of the slipway to align with the requests of the various different recreational groups. Look, moving the slipway, which is aligning with the harbour wall, which is a key protected structure, and there's very significant issues with regard to environmental and planning law and foreshore licenses and etc. If we went down the road of actually moving the slipway, we'd be into a multi-year project of a completely different nature. It would be a completely different animal. This is a public realm and active travel project, and we're leaving it at that. Suffice to say, with regard to the slipway, is the situation safer before and after? It absolutely is safer for all those clubs and recreational groups, and I think that's fairly clear to see from the pictures that were put up there earlier on. Councillor Healy has commented that it is a hostile environment. It definitely is a hostile environment for children and cyclists and pedestrians there, particularly on busier days. Maybe not on the less busy days, but we have to think about all the days. And thank you for your support in that regard. Councillor Newman, you asked some questions with regard to the loading bays, and I'm going to revert to Breen Doris later for the parking and the loading bay issues and parking for local residents, which we feel we've resolved to their satisfaction. You also mentioned antisocial, which we've discussed, and impressed by the priority for cycling in the area, which I think is really important, and the surfacing is really good in that regard, and speed reduction hopefully in the will keep the speeds down. Councillor Murphy, I said, understand the conflicts with regard to this, and most submissions you've mentioned are from the sporting entities and from the businesses, and again on both the statutory and non-statutory there's quite significant engagement from both of those entities, and while particularly in the sporting groups we will not be providing them 100% of what they want, which is a new slipway. We feel like we've gone a very long way to make the situation much safer for them in that regard. The net value of parking spaces, Breen Doris is going to discuss that one, and the set down areas. And we've already discussed the antisocial behaviour. Councillor Maguire, majority, you've talked about the majority and listening to the majority, and again, we're doing our best to do that. And it's great to hear you got positive submissions as well as maybe less positive ones. Safety is the key priority here. It is public realm interlinking with active travel, but the essence of all of that is to put pedestrians first, cyclists seconds, moving down through and down towards the private car, which is further down the pecking order there. Again, parking spaces outside houses, Breen Doris can deal with that, and the set down area also, and we've already discussed antisocial behaviour and the drinking on the path, and the net change in parking spaces, and the turning circle as well. Breen, if you can do that one. Councillor Butler raised the issues with regard to sailing and the regatta and the busy times, and there was two other issues Councillor Butler raised that I was a bit distracted with, so you might get them ones, Breen. Councillor Leary, thank you for your support. He's not here. And there was 2 issues there, Skerries Sailing Club and the potential to do more for them. We've done the best we feel that we can in the circumstance, and we feel it's a massive improvement. Okay, parking opposite the businesses, we'll discuss that. And antisocial behaviour, we've already discussed that. Red Island, we think we've certainly improved the situation across the Red Island Loop in terms of the ability to cycle there. Councillor Tormey, the loading bays, we'll discuss that. The parking spaces, the age-friendly spaces and the enforceability of them. Breen, you might have a word about that. You've mentioned the LAP and presumably in the context of a project in Malahide, and we, of course, were successful in that judicial review and progressing with that Part A planning, and we're progressing, obviously, to recommend that you approve this Part A planning here. Councillor Hopkins, and thank you for your support, and yeah, it is kind of difficult when we're retrofitting these, but we'll do the best that we can. We can't solve the problems for everybody. Councillor Guerin, I do like the photograph, but we've seen a good few of them, and I do accept people have been somewhat annoyed about some of the photographs we're using throughout this to explain what we're trying to do. And it doesn't look like that every day, but it does look like that some days, and that's really important that we acknowledge that and make it safe for all people using the area at that busy time. 35 extra age-friendly places, Breen will discuss that. And Councillor Boland, you've mentioned, yeah, we hope that this sets the bar high, and we might be regretting the success of this project. You'll be hounding us all for more in your areas in the time to come. And Councillor McDonough, the Mayor, linking the Climate Action, active travel, and bringing it all together with the public realm. I do think it's important that the two are interlinked, because you can't actually really have one without the other. It's about making safer pedestrians and cyclists, and also just opening up the place to be a more inclusive place for everybody, younger, older, and I think you had mentioned that some older people, when they stop driving, feel that they can't go out. We just hate to see that situation, and hoping that this place is inclusive, and you'll see that the street furniture and the park, the benches and so on, is ensuring inclusivity in that regard. Over to you, Breen.
Thanks, Sinead. First off, thanks, councillors, for the opportunity to present here this evening and to, I suppose, clarify some of the issues. I think I'll kick off on the parking, because I think we had about 15 submissions here, and there's some people conflicting, so hopefully if they're conflicted in their opinion, we might sway them at this point in time. So I suppose in relation to the parking, yes, there's 191 spaces currently, and at the end of the project there will still remain to be 191 spaces when we look at both Red Island and Harbour Road. Currently on Harbour Road we have 50 spaces, and what is proposed is 25 spaces. Of those 50 spaces, there are 17 of them substandard, and the others open directly out onto traffic with no protection, as was highlighted by Councillor O'Leary. In Red Island, currently we have 141 spaces, and what we're proposing is 166, and that is not through removal of green space in any way, it's through rationalising of the existing car parking that's there. So the dwarf walls in the small first car park that we meet, what we're looking to do is demolish those and make it more accessible for people. We'll also be incorporating the turning circle, and I'll maybe just go back to this photograph because it shows a lot of it. In the top left-hand corner you can see, actually, hopefully if my mouse works, you can see just where the arrow is pointing up here at the top. This is the turning circle, so where the existing first car park is and the barrier overhead, that will be set back into the car park, and it allows for a full turning circle in that area. As we come back down Harbour Road, we have these spaces on the left hand side, which is opposite the back entrance to the businesses. So that's facilitating two things. Number one, it's given us age-friendly parking and disabled bays, which are within 2 minutes distance of all the businesses and restaurants, also facilitating the current turning movements of the Guinness truck who delivers up the back lane and other deliveries that happen there. So we've done a swept analysis on that, and we're quite satisfied that that works quite well. In relation to the overall area, we're proposing over 80 bike parking spaces. Some of those are facilitated along Harbour Road, with the rest within Red Island itself. On the ordinary spaces, I suppose in the relocation, we have at the moment, we'll have 6 wheelchair spaces. We are proposing for 13. Age friendly, you have none at the moment, with 59 being proposed, and EV charging points, we have 0 at the moment, with 13 being proposed in the scheme. Just to give you a quick breakdown from Harbour Road in relation to those and the parking, and I think some of the councillors touched on it as well, and I'll go back to some of the other points in a moment. I think there was 6 in total had indicated on the parking, the loading bays, the turning circle, the taxi rank, and so on. We have, on Harbour Road, we have 45, which is current spaces there, with 17 substandard. There is no pedestrian facilities at all, so what we're looking to do is put in additional pedestrian facilities, which is the crossing points, which you can see there's 3 there in the picture, in the top of Harbour Road, and then we have the slipway that we've dealt with as well. The car parking areas, car park 1, 2 and 3, they are being rationalised to facilitate it. Currently car park 1 has 55, we are proposing 52 in that location. Car park 2 is part of the green area that's used. What we're looking to do is put in a suds treatment there, and that will come from 47 to 81, with car park 3 with no change to it. So hopefully that will address some of the conflicts or issues there. There was question in relation to the loading bay. The loading bay will be time plated, as Sinead has outlined, and was outlined in the presentation and in the Part 8 process. That will then turn into obviously parking at night time. The drop-off zone, and there was a suggestion that that could turn into parking. I think that would deter from the situation by turning the drop-off zone into parking. The drop-off zone, we would intend it to remain as a drop-off zone. Because if we get somebody to park it in the winter time, well, they'll think it's quite normal to do it in the springtime. So sometimes the winter months is different to other people's. Reduction in green space, I think Sinead has dealt with that. I'm just looking through the comments here to make sure we've picked up on everything. The business concerns, yes, I think the ESRI report has touched on that, and Sinead has also dealt with it. The summertime and the outdoor drinking, yes, that is an issue currently at present, and the antisocial behaviour. Councillor Ryan, I think it's a bit of a misrepresentation in relation to that everybody was against it, and with 13 against and a lot of negativity there. We have an awful lot of positives within that. And what you may deem as negative submissions were actually suggestions rather than negative submissions on a lot of fronts. They were maybe particular in some areas, which we've managed to address in the detailed design, and there is scope for possibly further addressment on the very detail in it, as regards does the loading bay, can it be moved up or down the road slightly? Yes, that's something can be looked at in negotiation. The benefits to Red Island, I think Councillor Quinn, there was just one issue you had mentioned, Councillor Quinn, as regards an active travel survey, Skerries. I'm not sure what you're referring to there, a current survey there. Maybe you could clarify that and we can answer it. The removal of the slipway, put it this way, there's better engineers than us has designed that slipway many, many years ago before the sailing club was ever there. So which was first, the chicken or the egg? That slipway has been designed, and I suppose if you look at the design in Skerries, it's quite unique, and I've done work on it myself years ago. It's in a bit of a horseshoe shape, and the reason for that slipway at that point is to try and coincide to maximise the tides that people can launch their boat at either low tide or high tide. To move that, we're moving it further maybe out of the tidal zone to try and cater for it, but I see that as totally a separate project, and as Sinead has outlined, this is a public realm job, this is a roads job. It's again, it's improvement to safety within the existing road. If we move into moving slipways, we're into a massive job there, which will take, definitely have to go to the board in my opinion, but it is a mammoth task to do, to facilitate what, and we have to look at the cost benefit analysis in doing that. Councillor Newman, yeah, I think you had issues in relation to the enforcement issues, which you had mentioned at the briefings and so on. We have discussed that offline. Again, to discuss it here, that's something for the Gardaí that we will have to work very closely with them, and that will come through as part of the Section 95, which is the next step process within this. So it's looking at the detailed design, what we approve or don't approve here tonight, and working through that Section 95, which includes the speed limit reductions, the signage that's required, and the enforcement and policing of antisocial behaviour or otherwise. Councillor Murphy, I know you had went through a good bit there. I think we've dealt with the parking issue, the set-down area as well, and the figures on that. The set-down area will cater for 2 to 3 cars. The loading bay will cater for 4 cars out of peak. That loading bay is also facilitated close to the residents, and we don't need to mention who they are or otherwise in this meeting, but that can be accommodated for their parking at night, and we had extensive conversations through the consultation process with them on that, both the non-statutory and then they went through in the statutory process as well. Antisocial behaviour, I think Sinead has dealt with most of that. Councillor Maguire, yes, unfortunately I think your comments are very true and ring true on every project. The negativity seems to come to the fore on all projects, and I think we need more people to put their support in on their submissions, which would maybe help. I know what Councillor Tormey was looking at as well in relation to any challenges in the future, and it outweighs that negative positive vote. It's not the Eurovision Song Contest, folks. It's actually it's a democratic process, and there's a number of entities involved. The turning bays, I think we've handled that one in relation to the swept analysis that's carried out, and we're quite confident that that will work. There is programmes in place to do that and technologies to do that. We have our design team here beside us who can back us up and give us further detail if we do so wish. The Councillor O'Leary, and it not safe. Yes, it is not safe at the moment, and I think a lot of the what we've introduced here into this is mainly dedicated on the safety of the vulnerable road user. And I think somebody else, I think it was Councillor Healy as well, indicated on it. It is currently a car-dominant area, and we need to change that perception. So I think from the scheme we're bringing forward, it definitely is on that. That's Councillor Butler, yes, just touching on that one. The turning bays, I think we've dealt with that. The parking for the boats, I think that was indicated in relation to it. We've dealt with that as well with the slide. It shows exactly where it has, and we're quite satisfied for that, specifically for parking regattas or for boating regattas and such like. Forgive me, Chair, if I've left anything out, and please bring it back to age-friendly parking. Yes, the age-friendly parking, apologies about that. It's not policeable at the moment. It's the same as the parent and child in your local store or supermarket, whatever it is. It is a courtesy thing. Now, whether that comes in on a legislative basis or not, I don't know. But I think the frown from people if I pulled up in an age-friendly, now I'm getting close to the age indeed myself that I can use it, but at the current times I choose not to use it rather than being frowned on by the natural public. Anything else from anybody?
No, thanks very much. Yeah. So we take the motion from Councillor Ryan. Now, we've had a wide discussion and a long kind of discussion of it, so I don't know that everybody needs to come in a huge amount, but allow you to speak briefly on it, Councillor Ryan.
Thanks, Mayor. A couple of things at the outset in relation to the presentation from Sinead. Sinead went through a lot of stuff that they have done in response to the consultation, but it was in response to the non-statutory consultation. There was no changes made. Sorry?
Who seconded that?
Councillor Paul.
Who was seconded?
Oh.
Yeah.
Thanks.
You're probably outside. But it was in relation to the changes you made after the non-statutory process. There were no changes made after the statutory consultation process at all. In relation to the non-standard parking everywhere, in relation to Councillor O'Leary made a strong point about safety. But if you go all around Skerries, it's non-standard parking. Even on the part of Harbour Road, which is not included in this project, there is non-standard parking and people open onto the road. So that in itself is not a reason to reject this. But look, when I put down this motion, and I outlined early on in my first contribution that I was opposed to this plan. It's not that I'm opposed to all of the stuff in the plan. There's lots of good stuff in the plan, but unfortunately, you can't get the good stuff without taking the bad with it. So it's a kind of you have to take all, or you can't get the bits you like. Basically, what the purpose of my motion is to say. Now, I read, Brian, I read every one of the submissions, and the 113, and I'm very careful about kind of what I say in here. If I say there's 113 that are opposed to it, it means there's 113 opposed to it. But some of them some of the people who are opposed to it might welcome some bits of it. So what I'm trying to do here is to say, to have a serious engagement with all of the stakeholders. For example, most people would favour widening the footpath on the hospitality side and upgrading the roadway to favour cycling. There are things that everybody could agree on. And I think with the active travel plan which is currently underway, and if this weren't to go ahead, this particular Part 8 weren't to go ahead, there would be an opportunity to bring people together, to bring all of the interested parties together to achieve certain things, and to achieve certain things in an incremental way. It doesn't have to be a big bang €6 million project to make some progress towards the situation that we'd all like to see achieved. So, my opposition to it, yeah, just this.
Councillor O'Brien.
Thanks, Mayor. Look, Councillor Ryan has every right to table the motion that he did, and you were correct to accept it. I suppose the point being, we're about to vote on either adopting the Part 8 or not. So I felt it incumbent on one of us to come back in after another, and you gave a lot of leeway, in fairness to you, to both the for and against in terms of speaking time in the previous, whatever it was, 40, 50 minutes of discussion. I just want to reiterate thanks to Brian and to Sinead for addressing the matters raised in a very comprehensive manner. As with any project, you're absolutely right, and I bear the scars of some public consultations from near and or from some more recent and some further away. But you're not going to manage to please everybody who makes a submission. And I suppose what we're doing when we're looking at these types of schemes is saying, do they match with our development plan? Do they match with our local policy? Do they match with national government policy? Absolutely this does. Change is difficult for some people. I accept that. We, and the Mayor alluded to the various trips, people you meet from all over the place, different countries. A lot of the concerns that have been raised here are similar across the board in other areas that we encounter. And we have to stand fast and back Mr. Story and his team, because they are delivering objectives that we've approved within our county development plan. It's more... Thanks, Mayor. I'll wrap up on this. It's incumbent on us not just to say we like the sound of something in a county development plan document. This is what happens when you actually put that into action. And we should support this scheme, and I believe from the contributions this will be supported by an overwhelming number of councillors. Thanks, Mayor.
Councillor O'Leary.
I don't intend to speak long, but I just want to sort of rebut a comment by my good colleague, Councillor Brendan Ryan, regarding the parking spaces in Skerries. They're all adjacent to footpaths in the town of Skerries. All. I can't think of any that are not, except the Harbour Road, where you have to walk out into the traffic to proceed to where you want to go. So they're not the same. They are not the same. They're safer and they're bigger. And I'm just going to leave it at that, more or less. The common good will drive this project forward. I think we're serving the common good here, and that's the majority of people, and I think the majority of people will welcome this. We won't know until we see it in place and everyone can use it. And I would urge the management to proceed as quick as possible if this goes through and implement it. Thank you.
Is the Part 8 agreed? Sorry, we'll start with the motion. Is the motion agreed? No. Roll call vote. We can take this if the room is happy to take the. We can't. Okay. No, we still need to pass the Part 8 yet. So just to be clear, if you're in favour of the cycle way, you vote against this motion.
The results of the vote are green, yes 2, yellow abstain 0, red no 35.
And now on the part 8. Do I read that out? Roll call vote.
The results of the vote are green, yes 35, yellow abstain 0, red no 2.
At the start of the meeting, so the part 8 is carried. At the start of the meeting, I also neglected to mention that we had an emergency motion. Unfortunately, I had to rule it out of order based on standing orders. Thanks. Item 27. I'll speak to you about it afterwards about why it was, but it wasn't in order in the standing orders, and I'll happily talk to you afterwards. No, not because it wasn't an emergency, but because it didn't relate to the business of the council. Item 27, Swords Cultural Quarter.
Good afternoon, councillors. Good evening at this stage. There was some commentary earlier about how long projects take to realise. Well, this one, I suppose, is quite a long one in that some of you will remember we started this back in 2014. So we've come a long way, and at this stage we are now starting to work on the programming and the content and what's going to happen in our new library and art centre across the road from us here. Some of you councillors will have visited the site with us this afternoon and seen the great progress that's been made, having started on site last year, and looking forward and anticipating its completion next year, and then its commissioning and fitting out for occupation the following year. So to that end, we're looking at the communications plan and the identity for our new cultural centre, to really embed it into the consciousness of our citizens, both in Swords and county-wide. We have had Kieran O'Guira and his organisation Zero G working with us on and off over the last 10 years for various aspects of the public engagement and the communications part of this project. And so we'd like to just update you as to where we are with this, and to hopefully inspire you and enthuse you as to where we are and how close we are to getting to the end of this 11-year project. So I'll hand over to Kieran now.
How are you? I'll make this quick because I know it's getting late in the evening. But actually, I've been waiting for this for about the last 21 years. The last time I presented to this chamber was 22 years ago. And this was the opening slide that I used at that presentation. And some of you look like you weren't even born when I last presented. And the others were in shorts. But there was a proposal at the time, or a suggestion, that the registration plates in Fingal should change from D to FL, and that this would help to rebrand the county. So I asked the councillors in the chamber that day, would the resale value of the cars of their constituents go up or down in value when they had voted to change the registration plate? So there's a little ripple of nervous excitement and shock around the room as they thought about what it is to think about a place and a sense of belonging and the value that it has for those. And the conversation we had 22 years ago was, how do you make sure that Fingal is not simply an administrative area, but a place that people belong to, a place that people identify with? And we've heard today the great passion that people have for the towns and hinterlands and villages that they have, that they represent. But it's also about establishing a place called Fingal. So while I'm here to talk today about the building that's going up down the road, in some ways it's an expression of the culture of Fingal that's been established. And what we established 22 years ago was a positioning for Fingal that it is not just about the place, but it's about the people, and it's about the life and opportunity of those people. And that's what we've heard debated in this chamber this evening and so many times before. And part of the building of the culture of Fingal, a lot of it is history that predates this administrative area. But the work of people like Betty and Sarah and their teams and the people that precede them in community libraries and arts really helped to shape that this isn't just a physical location, but it's a people with a culture that's distinct and is facilitated and celebrated through all the activity that these people do. So I kind of feel like these are redundant slides, having listened to the passion and the energy and the understanding of the role of culture and amenities that's expressed already in the chamber tonight. But we do know that investment in culture is not about some intangible value. It delivers social cohesion, it improves health and well-being, it is about identity and belonging. Giving people the opportunity to express themselves helps with innovation, education, lifelong learning. And all of these things create the environment for economic development. Sometimes we hear, when we work at an international level, of the trailing spouse syndrome, of I'm setting my factory up there, but my wife or my partner doesn't want to join me. So this is about creating a holistic place called Fingal. And as you said in your own strategy, connecting people through inclusive communities and vibrant and sustainable places. And that's what we're talking about. This is built on a vision for Fingal. More specifically, we've also been looking down through the vision that you have for Swords. And what we're talking about this evening specifically is the role that this cultural centre plays within the quarter. And when we think about Swords, you know, the ambitions for it to become a genuine 21st century city over time. So in 2014-2015, Swords Cultural Quarter was established, and we worked with the team and did community engagement around that time. But there's been a long journey, as you all know. Nothing happens necessarily overnight. And there's been master planning, vision and briefing that you will have all been exposed to over the years across the master planning for Swords itself through to the branding and governance and engaging with local communities around how they want this to develop. Design, planning and procurement, working with the architects like O'Donnell Toomey to translate that vision into something tangible. And we know that we're in the middle of the build phase, and you see that growing up when you walk down the street today. And in talking to the local community and engaging 10 years ago, what people said was really important is that what's created is for everyone. And you might have an open door, but we work with various cultural institutions across the country, the National Museum and others. And the number one thing that people ask themselves, not is it free, do I have to pay in, but would someone like me be welcomed there? So those kind of ideas and how we make people feel welcome and make this feel for them is really important, and that's what the people we engage with from the local community here told us. Also, it needs to be mixed use. We have various different things that have single uses, whether they're theatres or libraries, but they really wanted to make sure there was the full diversity. And what people spoke a lot as well within that is not just a physical thing that's done, but how it feels or sounds. So the importance of having a quiet place, or the importance of having a place that kids can go without being told to be quiet. And how do you facilitate all of that? And then also, while we know those people who care about the heritage and history of a place are very vocal, they were also very strong about saying we don't want this to be some pastiche. We have our own castle. We have a sense of history. We really want this to be a confident expression of the future. And we're seeing that come to pass. This is the little plan and drawings that you might have seen from O'Donnell Toomey. And we have a very interesting, complex in many ways, but simple in others, architectural plan that is now being realised. And this building reflects the history and reflects the future. And it's designed for people to feel as if they don't know what's inside and what's outside. They're inside before they even know they're there, trying to eliminate that idea of threshold. I'll move through this. You don't need to know about every room. But what is interesting and what we found really exciting is that people can move up through this building without ever having to open a door. The whole place is really that expression of openness and accessibility that's the heart of the kinds of things that you do here in Fingal, and that creates a place of life and opportunity. And what we're talking today about is just the idea of how we communicate it. How does this show up? And it is about tea and chats in the living room, as the space within the centre of this new centre has been called. It is about open, welcoming, accessible reception. This is a building that will be accessible 24/7. It's about learning and reflection in quiet library spaces. It's about inspiration and imagination in the art gallery. It's about places where people can work on ideas. It's not an enterprise centre, but it will be an engine for enterprise. And it's about shared experience in the Black Box Theatre, real world-class facilities that you can be proud of. But ultimately, this is about a meeting house for everyone. That's how we want to talk about it. It's an everyday open house. It is not some ivory tower. And so while all cultural life exists under this one roof, there's a library, there's a theatre, there's an art gallery, there's a maker space, there's an archive, there's a cafe, and people want to know what they refer to it as. And it's funny, I don't know, it's easier to name a kid than it is to name a building, it seems. Patrick or Mary and you're out the gate. It's a little bit more tricky when it comes to these things, when you don't have two parents, you have thousands of parents. And there's different namings approaches that you've taken across Fingal. We know Driocht. I'm the son of a Connemara man, so I'm comfortable enough saying it, but some people need to learn how to say that. The Seamus Ennis Art Centre, great piper, you know. But we know that the people in Seamus Ennis are trying to open that out beyond it just being simply about music. So while you can be inspired by a founding name, you can be limited by it too. We have the Carnegie, you know, great Iron Baron from America in the 19th century, gifting us a library. But we're now dropping the library out in terms of naming and hoping that we give the Carnegie new meaning as a centre for great visual art. And we have the Lark down the road, which is great for songbirds because it's musical, but it's only one particular dimension. So in terms of the criteria that we set ourselves, whatever name we have, it may be obvious, but it should be accessible and inclusive. It should be easy to say. It should build on the investment you've already made in the Cultural Quarter branding. And it also needs to conform with the Language Act. So as Gaeilge, we can't just assume that it's English only, like the Lark. The Lark is not a public building, it's privately owned. So when we think about naming, the naming will only, you know, the naming can be quite open. It's a question of what's the story that we want to carry. And the story that we think about when we think about this place is we think about the culture of this place. And in Fingal, culture is all around us. every day, everywhere. It's what brings us together. It's what makes us stand out. Because in Fingal, we have a culture of learning and playing, a culture of imagination and wonder, a culture of making and doing, of being and belonging. Welcome to our culture's new home. Welcome to Culture House. And this is what we propose calling it, Oris Culture, Culture House. And it's not just a name, it's the identity and the way in which we present it to the world is just as important, that it's simple, accessible. And it's the stories that we tell and associated with it that are important. And we have some very happy little accidents now when we look at the building, we have this spotlight on this house that exists within its plan as it wraps the courthouse. But we are also, by introducing Oris Culture or Culture House, we're connecting with the European tradition, where they understand that many different activities can exist under the one roof. We've the Culture House in Berlin, Dom Culture in Poland, and whether you're in Holland or Denmark, or if you see Casa de Cultura or Maison de la Culture, I have very bad past French in leaving, but I still know what that means, what that stands for. So Culture House, Oris Culture here in Swords, is maybe an obvious name, but it's a name that carries the stories that we want to tell. And we can bring that to life in a way that doesn't compromise the beautiful building that's proposed. And it also allows us to play with the name and breathe life into it. Be creative as we talk about a free house, a playhouse, a quiet house, an art house, a meeting house, a picture house, or an open house. That this is about being a making house and a reading house, because it's a culture house. And this playful creativity is what Fingal and the wider team are going to bring to life as we talk about this, and we'd encourage you to think about it too. And also as Gaeilge, whether it's Oris Culture or Oris Aliana or Crinne as we talk about coming together and meeting, or Oris Spree as we talk about the energy and excitement and fun of the place. It's really important that we connect with the idea and story we want to share about Culture House and invite people into this. And we hope to create very simple little tools that will allow us to build profile online and make it easy for the teams here to communicate in a way that's consistent and coherent, that asks people to make themselves at home, fáilte isteach with the Oris Culture, and is playful and energetic. So it's the last slide, but what we hope you'll feel is that there's an energy and an openness and an invitation that you and the entire organisation is extending as we kind of extend that sense of supporting a sense of a Fingalian culture, a culture that thrives, is full of life and opportunity here in Swords and across Fingal. So, Oris Culture, Culture House, fáilte isteach. Germad.
Thank you very much. I'd normally bring people in to comment, but we have a motion to suspend standing orders that I hope I speak for nearly everybody in saying thank you very much for an excellent presentation, and it's really fantastic to see all the work that's done, and anybody who's seen it, we're really looking forward to it. Thank you. So there's a request to suspend standing orders from Councillor Mulligan for if you can put that up, proposed by Councillor Mulligan, seconded by me. And so suspension of standing orders needs to be approved by a vote of 2/3 of the council. It's in order to take his motion on Gaza and on. Yeah.
Legally, we have to take the Chief Executive's report today.
I'm advised that we can take 2 chief executives together.
What do you mean, 2 chief executives?
So we can do next month. We can do both, but also we can vote to suspend standing orders, and we can then I will include to note the chief executive's report if we wish, but we'll certainly note in correspondence.
Can you present us with that legal advice?
So I'm taking the advice from the administrator. So the vote here is on can we see the motion there? Okay, yeah. Councillor Gearin.
Would it be possible to amend that motion in order to facilitate Councillor O'Brien's at the same time?
They're not related, so we won't take them both at the same time. If he wants to do a separate motion to amend standing orders, or to suspend standing orders, he can do so.
Okay.
So, Councillor Mulligan is looking to have this motion taken. We need a 2/3 majority. There's no discussion on whether to suspend standing orders or not. So if we suspend standing orders, we discuss this motion. If we don't, we continue with the Chief Executive's report. All right? Roll call vote. We've got to vote on whether to take the motion or not. So the first vote is on suspension, whether we suspend or not, and that has to be taken. There needs to be half of the councillors present, and there needs to be 2/3 of the councillors who are present that vote in favour of the suspension of standing orders. Councillor Newman, yeah. Councillor Newman. Order being called. Apologies.
I asked for clarification before, but we'll let it go.
Yeah, that's carried by more than 2/3. Yeah, we all. Okay. Yeah. 31 to 32. So.
The results of the vote are green, yes 31, yellow abstain 0, red no 2.
Okay, I'll ask Councillor Mulligan as the proposer to speak on it.
Thanks, Mayor, and I'm conscious of time. I really appreciate the members suspending standing orders to have this heard. This wouldn't have had to happen if motions could be heard based on the time frame.
So I'll look to suspend or to extend the meeting to deal with this item. Agreed?
Agreed.
Like we can have a vote on that if you wish. Yeah.
I find it a bit disconcerting that, given the topic, a member would be concerned about a few minutes of our time, given the topics we've had this evening on very valid motions. But I suppose I am delighted the motion's on the floor, and it would have never got to the floor without suspending standard order. So I thank the members for that. It goes without saying, we've all seen the horrific scenes which have happened in Gaza over the last couple of years, and just last week Trinity College cut ties with Israel, and all I'm asking for here is for us to ask the central bank to end the regulation of Israeli bonds issuances programme in this country. This has been agreed by all local Dublin authorities to date, and it would be an absolute honour for Fingal County Council, in my opinion, to agree the same as its Dublin counterparts and counterparts across the country in recognising that Israel have gone beyond reproach in what they call retaliation, but what is an act of genocide. And I hope our members in this council will support me in supporting this motion and passing the letter on to the central bank in the same vein. Thank you.
Councillor Virgil.
Thanks, Councillor Mulligan, for bringing this forward. I think it's disgraceful that the government voted down the bill last week to stop Ireland facilitating the sale of Israeli war bonds. The genocidal intent of the Israeli regime has been evident for 18 months now. Now 2 million people are on the brink of starvation. The bare minimum that should have been done was to stop these war bonds. Shannon Airport should be closed to the US military. Our airspace should be closed to munitions flights. We have a company on Swords Main Street, ASL Airlines, involved in the transport of munitions being used to slaughter innocent men, women and children. The Irish state is complicit in this genocide because the Irish political establishment are afraid to tackle, in any way resist the genocidal forces involved here, the US, the UK and the EU, because our economy is tied into Western capitalism. That's what's happening here. So if our economy is dependent on supporting a genocide, we need a different economy. This is a red line issue for humanity, and the bare minimum the Irish government should be doing is engaging in all practical measures it can to put a stop to the unconscionable slaughter of a defenceless civilian population that's been live streamed in front of our eyes for 18 months. It's beyond sickening that we're still facilitating this. Thanks.
Councillor Smith.
Thank you to Councillor Mulligan for putting this forward. I can't speak to the horror that we're seeing in Gaza at the moment. It's beyond belief and something you wish you'd never see in your own lifetime. I can't believe what we're seeing in our own nation at the moment. It feels like the nation is being gaslit by its own government. We spent 7 years of the Occupied Territories Bill being blocked at every corner. And now only last week we've seen this bill effectively being voted down in our government. You cannot stand in front of the nation and say that you are against genocide and facilitate its funding.
Councillor Watt.
Yeah, thanks to Councillor Mulligan for bringing forward the motion. I fully support it. I think we're all agreed across parties that what's happening in Gaza is the mass slaughter of civilians beamed into our television screens and through the internet daily and hourly. The original Hamas attack on Israel was fundamentally wrong, also a massacre of innocents. The reaction of the Israeli state is brutal, overwhelming, and utterly indefensible. We see mass human rights abuses every day. We see the slaughter of civilians, the slaughter of women and children, and obviously there's very little Fingal Council, frankly, can do about that. We've very little power to do that. But what we can do is pass a motion like this to put our absolute repugnance and condemnation of what's happening, the actions of the Israeli state and the Israeli government on the record. I fully support the motion.
Councillor Hopkins.
Yeah, thank you, and thanks, Dean, for bringing this motion. None of us can bear to see what is going on in Palestine at the moment. Just any time I have any of my little nieces or nephews in my arms or around me, I'm constantly thinking about the children in Palestine. They are being, if you listen to, and I'm sure you all have listened to any of the surgeons, the brave workers over there, aid workers, doctors, surgeons, and they're talking about children being blown up, ripped up, bombed, murdered, starved. Like, it's just beyond belief, and you can feel so helpless. And so there are things that we can do, and once we have been brave enough as a government to say the word genocide, then we are compelled, both morally and legally, to act, to do everything that we possibly can to help people. And so we have a motion, obviously I fully support this, we have a motion in the Dáil on Wednesday, brought by the Social Democrats and others, asking again, this is another opportunity for us to stop being complicit in this war, this genocide rather. So we have an opportunity to do the right thing. So I'm hoping that, I know the Dublin City Council have passed this, but that people in all parties will go back to the TDs and their parties and say, please support this motion on Wednesday, because, you know, we're going to look back and we'll be asked, you know, what did we do? And this is the least we could do. Thank you.
Councillor Redwood.
Thank you. Yeah, I totally support the motion and agree with all the comments that have been made so far about the absolute atrocity that's going on there. But the bonds directly used for funding the Israeli war machine, the effects of which we see. In fact, one of our local activists in the Palestinian support group, he is from Gaza himself, and his nephew was tortured to death by the Israeli machine. We see the flotilla that's going over there to try and deliver aid. You know, the people, Israel blocking communication, trying to block communication so the world couldn't see what was going on. And now they've kidnapped, the people who were on board there, and so on. And, I think Ireland's getting kudos for, recognising Israel's actions as being genocidal. And yet what concrete action is actually being taken? And this is once, they've been dragging their feet over the Occupied Territories Bill, as has been mentioned. The point about the airspace, Shannon Airport and so on, being used for munition flights. And, words need to be put into action, quite honestly. And I think this is one step that would have a big effect on the world stage, I think. And I think, it's very important that that we support this motion.
Councillor Newman.
Thanks. Yeah, I support the motion, and thanks, Councillor Mulligan, for bringing it forward. It's, the horrendous murders on the 7th of October, I think it was 2023, it can't be condoned at all, but really, Ireland itself is, well, we've made some movements to make representation. I certainly feel we are standing idly by, so there's no reason whatsoever for Israel to continue doing what they're doing. They got some retribution, so why should they continue to, decimate and enact genocide on the Palestinian people? Like, it's, flying bombs into apartments, and as when the council said, tearing children to pieces and decimating them, decapitating them, that's 100 times worse than what happened. If it can be anything worse than what happened on October the 7th, but that certainly matches up to it. And I think it really is time that the Irish government did a little bit more than what they're doing. Thanks.
Councillor Quinn.
Very much support the motion. It's extremely disappointing that the Sinn Féin bill last week was voted down by the government parties, and it is shameful to think that message went around the world, that a country that has borne the tires of occupation would turn its back on the people of Palestine in that way. We're not going far enough. It's simply not going far enough. And I think an example of that today is a phone call that I received from a group that I'm involved with called GA Palestine, who are being told that we will not be waiting 4 weeks for visas to bring 33 kids from Gaza to Ireland to tour around the GA sites. With the agreement of the GA, we'll be waiting 8 weeks, and that lies at the Department of Foreign Affairs and the Department of Justice in this country. So if we are struggling to get 33 children over here to give them some relief in Gaza, I really, really am not hopeful that the government is going to change its mind on Israel bonds if this is how they're dealing with it today. And I'll be looking for every councillor here from parties and none to make representations to the Minister for Justice in relation to these 33 kids. And I hope that you will all receive emails from GEA Palestine, your TDs will, and I hope that you can support that. Thank you very much.
Councillor High.
Yeah. What's happening in Gaza is a genocide. It's an open-air prison, and Israel is a rogue state in how it's acting, and it should be treated like that by the international community, and unfortunately it's not. And Ireland has done more than most Western and European nations, but unfortunately it is a very low bar, and it would be a lot more effective if there was a EU-wide response on this, but unfortunately that hasn't been the case, and many countries have been very pro-Israel and supported what they've done, which is very shameful. Men, women and children starving. You know, for anyone with children to have to watch it on the news every night, it's shocking, and the bombing of hospitals is obviously horrendous. And what Hamas did on October 7th was obviously disgusting as well, but the response from Israel towards Palestinian civilians is wrong. I don't know if this motion is going to make any difference. You would feel quite powerless sometimes in this council or in this country, because nothing can seem to stop what Israel are doing. But the government have said that this would be unworkable and not complying with EU law, but I think just the nature of what's going on, I'll have to support the motion. Thanks.
Councillor O'Meara.
Thank you, Mayor. I strongly welcome and support this motion purely on emotive grounds. For me personally, I think I'm beginning to see a trend right here in this chamber where members take a stand on what they consider to be the right stand to be taken. Especially, you know, last September we took a stand on racism, and I think sometime last year as well we took a stand on, you know, HP equipment and how it relates to the ongoing war. For me personally, I think it's a no-brainer. You know, supporting this motion is taking a stand on what we feel about humanity and the deplorable situation in Gaza. You know, I mean, it's heart-wrenching to see what goes on there every day and how whole communities have been razed to the ground, regardless of, you know, what's brought this whole thing on. You know, the war just needs to stop. End of story. And it's on those grounds that I support this motion. And also to say, you know, the consequence of this war or this, you know, what's going on there, you know, could be mass displacement. Obviously, that's what it is. And, you know, we might find people, you know, wanting to migrate elsewhere. And of course, that's going to be another issue that comes up because people are going to react to that. So it's very important that we call a spade and say that what is happening in Gaza is absolutely unacceptable. And as a council, to take a stand on it, as has become, you know, our tradition here, to call a spade and to say when it is wrong, it is wrong. Thank you.
Councillor Kelly.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to welcome Councillor Mulligan's motion. I think it's very true, and it's horrific what's happening in Israel. You know, when I went to school and friends of mine went to school, we were educated about the Holocaust and how evil and bad and barbaric that was. It's all in mainstream media on a regular basis, how bad it was. This is on the same level, in my opinion. It's horrific what's happening in Gaza. And it's a pity that we don't have a council like this in America to tell them to stop Israel, what they're doing, because they're the ones with the power. We've only got a little bit of power here, but I do welcome the motion. Thank you.
I'm very glad to second the motion and echo everything that has been said. So is the motion agreed? Agreed. So we want to note the C's report and the correspondence 31 to 31D. And a proposal for the proposed correspondence, seconded. Councillor Mulligan, noted. Council meeting is finished. Thank you very much.